Opening one eye, the girl was breathing heavily. Her trembling palms lay on the wrist of the man who was strangling her body shaking with fear. The palms slowly moved away from the girl's neck, and she was finally able to take a deep breath, the air rushing into her lungs, bringing relief and life. Her body went limp. With one powerful blow from Oliver's hand, the guy strangling the young girl flew back. The boy's body skidded across the ground, leaving a trail behind it. Ouch! He winced, closing his eyes. The hero rose from the ground with difficulty and sat in the lotus position. He looked down at his hands, looking at them in surprise. The guy grabbed his head and squeezed his hair. He winced in pain. His eyes were closed. Pictures started to pop into his head, one after another. They flashed before his mind's eye so fast that he could barely make them out. He frowned even more. What are these memories? Suddenly, the sharp end of a sword touched his shoulder. He looked up and saw a girl in front of him. Her eyes were full of determination. "Little brother, you have already lost, so why do you continue to resist?" The girl blushed with embarrassment, but her face still remained angry. Her eyebrows were drawn together across the bridge of her nose. "I don't know." The guy stared at her in surprise, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. "You don't know, you say?" This answer only made the girl even more angry. "Little brother Oliver, give up already. Big sister is not interested in you at all." A female voice suddenly rang out nearby. The boy turned his head and saw a petite girl with pink hair. "You've already lost twice, but you're still acting like an idiot. Are you really that ashamed to accept rejection?" She still didn't calm down. "When did I ever say I liked her?" Oliver's eyebrows rose and he stared at the girl in confusion. "You! Oh, you! How shameless you are!" Choking on her indignation, the girl began to shake her finger at him. "Little sister, we have nothing more to do here, let's go." The girl abruptly removed the sword from the guy's face and put it in the case on her belt. A light blue platform formed under the girl's feet. She took a step forward and stood on it. The platform rose into the air, carrying her higher and higher. Oliver grabbed his head, feeling dizzy, and then pressed his palm to his nose, from which blood suddenly gushed. "What the hell is going on here? This doesn't feel like a dream. All my senses are working, and I even felt the cold from the blade on my neck." The boy, leaning against the tree, exhaled and put all the pieces of the puzzle together. "I was transported to the game Legend of the Immortal Swordsman." Beads of sweat appeared on his face. The boy started walking around in circles, thinking about what had happened to him. He couldn't believe he was in a video game. Damn it. In the story, it was the scene where NPC Oliver challenges Adelaide and is soundly defeated. Because he kept pestering her, it eventually forced Adelaide to seek help from Big Brother Alexander. After it was revealed that Oliver was a member of the Demon Clan, he was killed by Adelaide during the Great Competition of the Heavenly Realm half a year later. The boy put his hands on his face and threw his head back. "The worst part is that I kept missing NPC dialogues during the game. I only vaguely remember the general plot." Oliver exhaled heavily. "Luckily, I almost finished the game and still know about the main events. If you think about it, I can be compared to a god." The guy smiled at the corner of his lips and resolutely clenched his hand into a fist. "Little brother Oliver." Hearing his name called, Oliver turned around and saw a beautiful girl with purple hair approaching him. It was Beatrice, an outer disciple. Oliver raised his eyebrows in surprise when he saw the girl, and he remembered that she was Alexander's lackey, pretended to be Oliver's friend. In fact, she loves Alex according to the plot. One night when Oliver was finally rejected by Adelaide and fell into unconsciousness, Beatrice sucked out his entire essence, hiding behind the fact that she wanted to comfort him. Suddenly, her foot tripped on a small stone. At that moment, the girl felt herself losing her balance. With her hair flying and a smile on her face, she began to fall in the direction of the guy. "Oh, Olya's little brother, help me!" Oliver suddenly stepped to the side and the girl, losing her balance, fell face down into the dirt with a loud thud. Beatrix raised herself slightly, leaning one hand on the ground, wiping her cheek, which was covered in dirt, with the other hand making a pitiful face. "Why didn't you catch me? Ouch, how it hurts. Aren't you ashamed?" "Sister Beatrix, men and women should not touch each other. I just didn't want to tarnish your reputation. I think you should get up and drink some healing wine at home." Oliver quickly turned around and rushed forward, throwing out at the end, "And I have things to do, so I'll be the first to turn away," the girl shouted after the running boy. "Little brother? I can't get up, little brother." But when he disappeared from sight, her face darkened, she frowned angrily. And how will I explain to Alexander that I returned empty-handed?" Oliver walked along the narrow stone path that meandered through the greenery and flowers, leading him to a two-story house located on a hill. The boy gently rubbed his neck with his palm, thinking, "Currently, I am an outer disciple of Lu Shui Peak, so I do not have a token. And without it, I will not be able to leave the barrier of the heavenly realm. I must complete the mandatory tasks to obtain the token." The guy quietly entered the house, carefully closing the door behind him. He gently sat down on the edge of the bed and put his palms on his knees, thoughtfully looking at his legs. "After all, if I can't leave the heavenly kingdom, then most likely I'll die from Adelaide's sword in 6 months. With a heavy sigh, he fell back onto the soft mattress. Closing his eyes, he continued his thoughts. Right now, she is already at the 3rd stage of vein condensation, while I am only at the chi refining stage. By that time, Adelaide will have reached the peak of the golden core stage, and this pathetic NPC will still not break through. He opened his eyes wide and frowned sharply. I need to leave the heavenly realm before the great competition, and since I've come to this exciting world, I should enjoy it to the fullest. Suddenly, Beatrice appeared in the doorway. Leaning against the frame, she smiled slightly and drawled, "Little brother Oliver, Adelaide never liked you." Oliver exhaled and rose from the bed, assuming a sitting position, frowning his brows. "Damn it, how annoying! But I'm no less attractive than she is, so why don't you pay attention to me?" The girl took a step towards him. Oliver just rolled his eyes, pursing his lips. The guy propped his cheek up with his fist and, without showing any particular emotion, looked indifferently at the girl who was approaching him. She said softly, "Let me heal your broken heart," and looked at him with a sparkle in her eyes. Oliver's brow furrowed, his cheeks flushed, and a shiver ran down his spine. "What's going on? Why do I suddenly want to be as close to her as possible?" Beatrice gently ran her hand down his cheek, stroking it softly. "Look, your body wants me too." She deftly climbed on top of him, pushing him onto the bed, her body softly pressing against his, creating an intimate atmosphere between them. As soon as the maiden touched his cheek with her palm again, Oliver took a deep breath. His heart stopped for a moment. That's it, come on. Soon you will experience heavenly pleasure." Beatrice leaned towards the guy's ear, gently squeezing his shoulder with her palm. Oliver pushed the girl away from him with a sharp movement of his palm, so that she flew into the air. The girl hit her back against the door of the house with a loud bang, the sound of the blow echoing as if someone had hit a metal glass. Beatrice collapsed to the floor, gritting her teeth against the sharp pain in her back. She raised herself slightly on her hands, wincing in pain. Oliver looked at his palm in surprise, from which a mysterious blue glow emanated. "The energy of continuous movement to my fingertips. Is this cultivation?" He raised his gaze to Beatrice, who was still lying on the floor. But at this moment, his thoughts were clouded by something else entirely. The original master of the body was a demonic wolf, even though he had just recently assumed a human form. His first stage of Starfire is equivalent to the foundation formation stage of human cultivators. The girl rose to her feet, placed her palm on her chest, and cleared her throat slightly, trying to catch her breath. "Brother Oliver, are you crazy?" Oliver, with his lips curled in displeasure, raised his finger and threatened the girl. "Sister Beatrice, I told you outside that I don't want to tarnish your reputation by touching you. Besides, this is my room. I even closed the door, but you came in even without my permission." The girl bashfully lowered her eyes to the floor. Her cheeks were slightly flushed. "I've been in love with you for a long time, you know it yourself," Oliver chuckled, folding his arms across his chest and leaning slightly towards her. "In love, you say? Then why did you cast a charm spell on me? Eh, Sister Beatrice?" The girl's eyes immediately widened. The guy kicked the girl in the ass with one decisive movement, escorting her out the door, throwing out the rest of her clothes as well. Oliver smiled triumphantly as he closed the door and rubbed his palms together, shaking off the dust. "Wanted to suck out my essence to help her lover. Does she really think I'm as much of an idiot as the original owner of the body was? Although I don't remember the backstory of this NPC very well, it said something about the blood essence of his demonic wolf clan and how it greatly accelerates cultivation. But he was lazy from the start and didn't want to cultivate." Oliver pressed his fingers to his chin, grinning. Towards the middle of the day, a wind picked up, violently tearing leaves from the trees, which swirled through the air before falling softly to the ground. The guy looked around carefully, making sure there was no one around. Oliver began to move carefully between the trees in the forest, trying to choose the quietest paths. He carefully jumped from one tree to another. He jumped forward sharply and, not expecting an obstacle, hit his face against the barrier that suddenly appeared in front of him. Oliver lost his balance and before he could react, fell to the ground. Ouch! You can't just leave the kingdom of heaven. The girl confidently walked through the barrier and, leaning over the guy, asked with interest, Oliver? He looked at the girl in surprise. Alice? The girl looked at the guy in surprise. Her eyes widened slightly and her lips parted. Do you want to leave the mountain? No, what are you talking about? I was just taking a walk. I was a little tired and decided to take a break. Oliver rubbed his neck awkwardly. Sister Alice, have you just returned from a mission? I received a message from the Chronicles that junior brother Oliver challenged Lu Shui Peak's top disciple Adelaide. This is big news. So I just had to go back and write about it. The girl started walking forward, and the guy followed her. I received a solo mission, but on the way there, I heard about this event. I thought I still had enough time to complete the task, so I came back to write the article, but I never imagined that I would run into you. You just have to tell me the details. The guy rolled his eyes at this, unable to contain his irritation, and putting his hand to his face. Well, I hit my head then. It's all just a misunderstanding. Little brother, you're not really in love with Adelaide, right? In fact, everyone around you is saying that you're just jealous of big brother Alexander. So you're picking on Sister Ida, is that true? Alice laughed softly, putting her hand to her lips. But you don't have to worry, she only treats him as a sect brother. The boy looked at the girl in surprise as he continued walking. How can I even like Sister Yida? Even though we are all students in the Heavenly Realm sect, there is still a boundary between us and Yan Yang Peak. I have almost never seen Sister Yida. Huh? But the last time you challenged her, you said that you would defeat her in the great competition of the Heavenly Kingdom and make her your wife. The guy shuddered at the girl's words and, pursing his lips, looked away. Sister Ida is at the vein condensation stage and will definitely reach the gold core in half a year. She is indeed the elder sister. Moreover, she received a title from the sect master. So now she can't be called the elder sister. Now she should be addressed as Miss Adelaide. Alice smiled and looked at the guy with a sly look. I got drunk that day and started talking nonsense, hee. Oliver's face began to sweat from excitement, and he slowly looked away. Little brother, tell me, was there something between you and Mrs. Adelaide? Alice suddenly pressed herself against Oliver's shoulder, grabbing his hand. And for this information, I will give you 3 low-grade spiritual stones, okay? A bright smile appeared on her face, and her eyes widened like a child who saw candy. In the residential area of Lu Shui Peak, the wind died down and silence reigned all around. The cozy streets became calm. Sister Alice, I just remembered that I left some healing soup to cook in my room. Oliver abruptly pulled his hand out of the girl's grip. He's probably almost ready, so it's time for me to go. Oliver quickly ran forward, hoping to get away from the annoying girl. Alice suddenly blocked the boy's path, shouting, Little brother, wait! He jumped back slightly. We're neighbors. Wouldn't it be better if we went together? Ha, I think I really hit my head hard. Then let's go. Oliver laughed awkwardly, forcing out a semblance of a smile. Actually, I think you have very pure energy. If you continue to train hard, then in 3 years, you will have a chance to fight Miss Adelaide. There is no need to rush and do everything in that year. Alice followed the guy, pressing her palms to her chest. He slowly lowered his head, and then a deep sigh escaped his chest, his eyes rolling back under his eyelids. I don't even know if I can survive the next 6 months. The dream lotus that Miss Adelaide currently has is a reward that the sect master himself gave. If you could obtain one extremely rare blade, the Sun Dragon Flame Sword, it would greatly accelerate your development. But I don't know where it is now, Alice exclaimed and looked at the guy with admiration in her eyes. Thank you very much for the advice, Elder Sister Alice. But I really don't have any feelings for Sister Ida. She's a bird of a completely different feather. Oliver folded his hands in front of him and bowed slightly in front of the girl. You don't have to pretend Mrs. Adelaide is a household name right now, and you've met her so many times already. The girl pressed herself against the guy from behind, wrapping her palms around his torso. I hope that your relationship will soon reach a new level. By the way, you were just trying to get down the mountain. You're not tired at all, are you? The girl asked, breaking away from the guy. I knew I wouldn't be able to hide this from Sister Alice, Oliver said quietly. If I remember correctly, you haven't completed any missions yet. If you can complete at least 4 tasks, you might be allowed to go down the mountain. The girl gently put her finger to her lips. I was just thinking about going to the resource pavilion tomorrow about this, Oliver replied with a smile on his face. Brother Oliver is a little different from how he used to be. Before this, you always came up with various excuses when I persuaded you to take the task." She frowned and looked at the guy, slightly squinting her eyes. "Today you are a bit hyperactive. Maybe it's all because—" Oliver swallowed, trying to pull himself together. He felt his hands go cold and his breathing quicken. "Has she realized I'm not the right NPC? If I get found out, who knows what awaits me? In the power of love?" Alice finished her sentence, moving closer to Oliver's face. "Oh, haha. It's just that after 2 years in the Heavenly Kingdom, I realize that the older I get, the less time I have to waste." Oliver exhaled and laughed, squinting. "Here we are." Alice pointed to a small building ahead. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in soft pink hues. Sounds began to be heard from behind the wooden door, as if a real fight was taking place there. "I have a bad feeling about this." Oliver looked at the door, drawing his eyebrows together. "Oh well, it's already dark, so I'll make a plan of action tomorrow." Oliver resolutely opened the door and resolutely stepped inside. As soon as he stepped inside, his body suddenly transformed, and he found himself in the body of a dog, soft white fur, an elongated nose and pointed ears, all of which replaced the familiar human features. "Oh shit. I forgot that the original owner of this body is a demonic wolf. And in the early stages, I can return to my animal form when night falls." He grabbed his clothes, which remained on the floor, with his teeth, trying to lift them up. "Spiritual beast?" A voice suddenly rang out from behind him, and he froze, clutching the cloth in his mouth. "Are you the spirit beast of one of our students?" It was Adelaide. She slowly walked up to the beast and looked at it in surprise. The girl squatted down and gently stroked the dog's head, causing its tail to twitch joyfully. "And even without a binding spell, don't you really have an owner?" Adelaide carefully picked up the dog and held it to her chest, hugging it lovingly. "This is a student dormitory, so if you don't have an owner, you can't come in here." The girl's gaze fell on the clothes that Oliver left behind when he turned into an animal. She snorted quietly. "Whose room is this? How can you even leave your clothes right next to the entrance? Are you hungry? Then come to me. I'll give you something to eat, poor thing." Ida pouted slightly, and Oliver stuck out his dog tongue and closed his eyes, enjoying the pleasant smell from the girl. Oliver opened his eyes abruptly. "Oh no, Adelaide has a jade spirit physique that naturally attracts demons. If I can absorb some of her essence, it will greatly enhance my cultivation." He shook his head sharply to clear these thoughts from his mind. Noticing this movement, the girl frowned. "What's wrong, puppy?" Oliver looked at her in surprise, his red eyebrows frowning. "Puppy? Is it really the same person?" Adelaide bowed her head and touched the soft fur of the dog with her lips. "Don't be afraid, your sister will protect you." After closing the door behind her, Ida walked into the room and said gently, "Master entrusted me to deliver something to Uncle at Lu Shui Peak, and I accidentally met you, little puppy. I think you're very cute." She placed Oliver on a small table and took a rag in her palm. "Let me wipe your little paws." Adelaide took the puppy's little paw and gently wiped it with a cloth to wipe away the dirt. "You're dirty, puppy. I don't remember ever seeing a spirit beast in the heavenly realm." Ida picked up a small comb and gently began to comb Oliver's white fur. The puppy sat motionless, thinking, "What the hell is going on here? Why is Adelaide not acting like she did in the game? And why is she treating me like this anyway?" Today, little brother Oliver challenged me to a fight again, and, as expected, he lost. He's so weird. Everyone thinks he likes me, but I don't think so. I don't really hate brother Ollie, it's just... Ida gently picked up the puppy and lifted him up so that he was now at her eye level. He looked at her in surprise. "It doesn't matter, you're still little and you won't understand anything anyway." The dog's tail was pressed against his body between his legs, and his ears were lowered. "What a shame! I'm naked." "I didn't expect you to be so shy, the epitome of innocence. Today I'll let you sleep with me." Adelaide picked up Oliver in her arms and gently lowered him onto the bed. As soon as the girl began to pull off her clothes to get ready for bed, the puppy blushed brightly. His small ears pressed against his head for a moment, and his eyes widened in surprise. She really likes little animals. Does she really often catch spirit beasts to sleep with her? What should I do? Do I really have to sleep next to her? The girl settled comfortably on the soft bed, pressing a small puppy to her chest. She hugged him tenderly and covered herself with a blanket. "Time to sleep, baby." Oliver made a sad face and his eyes closed, reflecting the thoughts, "How can I even sleep here?" After she undressed, the smell of her jade body became even stronger. "I can't hold myself back anymore." But now I'm just a little dog that can't talk or do anything else, damn it. I'm trapped. Oliver, having waited until the girl finally fell asleep, carefully and gently got out from under the blanket. He tried not to disturb her. "Baby, stop fidgeting," the girl muttered sleepily and rolled over onto her other side, and the puppy suddenly froze in place. The dog quietly got off the bed and went to the open window. A light breeze tickled her nose deliciously. "I think we can climb out the window. Then we won't have to make noise opening the door." Oliver, happily wagging her tail, jumped onto the windowsill. He pulled himself up and, without thinking, jumped out of the window, deftly landing on the ground. Without a second's hesitation, the guy rushed away from the house. The next day, as the first rays of the sun illuminated the city, the resources pavilion, crowds of people poured into the square, turning it into a sea of heads and sounds. As Oliver entered the room, the low hum of voices suddenly died down. People turned to look at him, their eyes following his every step. Whispers ran through the crowd. "Isn't this the same disciple from Lu Shui Peak who challenged Miss Adelaide yesterday? I heard that he is jealous of her towards senior brother Alexander, afraid that she will run away with him." Senior brother Alexander is the top disciple of Lu Shui Peak. How can this Oliver even compare to him? The boy snorted, his disdain for the crowd's comments obvious. He turned and glanced over his shoulder at them. "Stop whispering already, I can hear you." Oliver walked up to the counter where an elderly man with black glasses was sitting. "Elder, I came to take a low-level mission." The old man raised his finger and said, "All the missions for this month have already been distributed. Unfortunately, you are late." "What? But I really need to." Oliver raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at the elder. "Oh, so it must be—" The old man stroked his long white beard. He leaned over and opened an old wooden box that was under the counter. Inside, there was a golden ticket. He carefully took the ticket in his hands and showed it to Oliver. "I still have one more mission left. The reward for it is only 2 points. So few people want to take it. Are you sure?" Oliver took the golden ticket in his hands and looked at it in surprise. It was made of a thin sheet of real gold and decorated with intricate patterns. And the old man continued, "The mission will begin the moment you leave the mountain. If you don't complete it within a week, you won't be able to take another mission for 2 months. A fire lit up in Oliver's eyes. "Then could you please help me with the registration? I agree." As the day wore on, the sky turned a palette of soft pastel colors, and the city lights came on one by one. Oliver untied the strings of the bag and poured its contents onto the table. Several small blue stones rolled out onto the smooth wooden surface. The guy propped his cheek with his palm and exhaled. 12 low-grade spiritual stones. The original owner was a real poor man. The guy leaned over the table, his gaze fixed on the blue stones. He closed his eyes and put his palm to his head. "Dude, you had a weak cultivation, and almost no money. Why did you even come to the heavenly realm?" Although I seem to recall that you come from a pretty good family, a famous clan of demonic wolves. But then why are you so poor? Little brother Oliver." Alice looked at the guy through the window. She smiled widely and her face glowed with joy. "I heard that you already took the mission." "Oh, elder sister Alice, yes, I registered not long ago. The elder gave me a one-time permission to leave the mountain." The boy shuddered and recoiled from the window. "By the way, I heard that Miss Ida also just received a mission to leave the mountain, and as far as I know, your mission targets are very close. Are you saying that on purpose?" She lightly threatened him with her finger. "It's just that no one wanted to take this mission, and the elder agreed to give it to me. A simple coincidence." Oliver raised his palms in a conciliatory gesture. "Is that so? Is it because you have so little money?" Alice looked at the table in surprise, on which several small stones were lying. "If you complete this mission, you can exchange the 2 points you earned for 10 medium spirit stones," Alice said, and smiled, closing her eyes. 10 medium spirit stones? That's equivalent to 300 liang of silver," Oliver exclaimed happily. "Depending on the region, it might even be more. Well, since I've given you such valuable information, now you simply must tell me about your romantic adventures with Miss Adelaide when you return. And if you ever become cultivation partners, then I will be famous throughout the entire heavenly realm." From the information provided, the girl lightly stamped her foot, hitting her heel on the ground. "See you later." Alice waved her hand at Oliver and turned around, walking forward. Oliver let out a tired breath and closed his eyes. After all, talking to Alice was exhausting. Double cultivation with Adelaide? I would have died before I even tried. The next day, a boy was walking through the forest, along a narrow path. surrounded by tall trees and dense undergrowth. The sun was shining through the leaves, casting strange shadows on the ground. He was thinking out loud, 12 low-grade spiritual stones, mid-star flame stage, knowledge of the plot, that's all. Oliver grabbed his head, saying a little louder, "There's no point in even thinking about escaping from the heavenly kingdom. In a week I'll die of hunger. I need to get some money as soon as possible and break through to the next stages. Otherwise, when the time comes to escape, I'll be caught off guard. Something will definitely not go according to plan." Oliver yawned loudly, the sound echoing through the quiet forest, while Beatrice sat behind the rock in front of him and couldn't help but chuckle at his involuntary outburst. She gently lifted her leg out of the water, dousing it with drops that sparkled in the sun. "It's so clean here." The guy, running past the stone, noticed movement out of the corner of his eye and shuddered, opening his eyes wide. "Who's there?" Oliver screamed at the top of his voice, frightening the girl, who, before she could come to her senses, fell into the water, and splashes flew in all directions. "Big sister Beatrix?" the boy asked uncertainly, a couple of drops of sweat rolling down his face. "Brother Olya, were you really looking for me?" The girl rose from the water, looking at the guy with a languid gaze. "I was just passing by and decided to quench my thirst. If I had known that you were swimming here, I would have made a detour," the guy laughed, awkwardly rubbing his neck with his palm. "What a coincidence that we are here alone, the two of us. Now you don't have to be shy." Beatrice smiled, tilting her head to the side, while her dress stuck to her wet body. "I need to get down from the mountain as soon as possible to complete the mission. I dare not distract you any longer, Sister Beatrice. Enjoy your water treatments." Oliver turned around and jerked to the side. "Ollie's little brother, don't go!" She suddenly pounced on him from behind, hugging him around the neck and laughed merrily. "You used to be much kinder to me. What happened? If I made you angry, then please tell me what I did wrong." She leaned towards his ear and whispered, "Big Sister Beatrice, are you really a pervert?" Beatrice fell to her knees, resting her palms on the floor. She was breathing heavily, showing her helplessness. "Pervert? Ollie's brother, I really have feelings for you, so why are you treating me like this?" the girl said plaintively and put her palm on her chest, looking at the guy. "Big Sister Beatrice, you better pay more attention to Big Brother Alexander. Bye-bye." Oliver snapped his fingers, turned on his heels and walked forward. The unknown guy sat on a tree branch stretching over the lake and listened to the spectacle unfolding before him. He nimbly jumped down from the branch, leaning his palm on the ground, landing softly on the ground. "This Oliver is really strange, even though he says he admires you, but I heard that he has a rather close relationship with this Beatrice." The guy stood up and started to brush the dust off his uniform. Each light blow on the fabric raised clouds of dust that slowly dissolved into the air. She just tried to get closer to him, but he refused her and even called her a pervert. "I still can't figure out what's going on in his head." He took a couple of steps forward and stood next to Adelaide. "Little brother Marcus, you shouldn't meddle in other people's business." Ida turned to the guy, throwing him a menacing look. "I apologize, big sister. I allowed myself too much." He bowed and folded his palms in front of him. "Recently, the demonic forces have been active again. This time your mission is related to it, so please be careful." Marcus looked as Adelaide slowly slipped through the barrier. "Your mission is no easier, younger brother Marcus. I believe that you will return victorious, big sister." The boy smiled brightly, raised his eyebrows and looked at the girl with a sincere look. Oliver walked up to the barrier, clutching the golden ticket in his palm, his red hair fluttering in the gentle breeze. The guy held the ticket up to him, his hand passing through the protective field as if it wasn't there. "It really works!" Oliver stepped forward decisively, passing through the barrier with his entire body. "It's a pity that this one-time pass has a return function. If I exceed the mission time, I will be forcibly teleported back to the heavenly kingdom. Otherwise, I would have already thought about how to escape." Oliver walked up to the gate and looked up at the inscription. The letters were carved into the stone. Oliver put his palm to his forehead to get a better look at them. The guy walked among the people, looking at everything with surprise and curiosity, because everything in Zuoyao County was unfamiliar and interesting to him. He turned around to look at the two guys behind him. "Even though I've seen the items being sold here before, it feels completely different in real life. Back then, all of these things were just static images, and most of the sellers couldn't even engage in conversation." Oliver froze in place, remembering that the previous owner of the body did not even have a weapon, and with a decisive step, he walked towards the tavern with a weapon. Approaching the wooden building, the guy was immediately greeted by the girl. She was standing at the entrance, Sir, are you interested in a specific type of weapon? We have absolutely everything. And secret weapons that can be hidden even in your sleeve, and huge axes with which you can easily crush your enemies. Oliver looked at the swords that stood in a row, attracting customers. They were inlaid with precious stones. I need a regular sword, so help me choose the right one. Oliver came closer to examine the swords. He took one of the swords in his hands and felt its weight and balance. The guy ran his fingers along the blade of the sword and felt its sharpness. How much is this iron sword worth? The girl smiled, watching the guy examine the blade. You have a keen eye, sir. This sword cuts steel like butter. Perfect for self-defense and will cost you only 10 million silver. Oliver turned sharply to the saleswoman, saying hesitantly, I don't have any silver with me. Can I pay with low-quality spirit stones? The dark-haired girl folded her fingers into an OK sign and smiled. Don't worry, there's a great pawn shop nearby. You can easily exchange the stones for silver there. If you convert it into spiritual stones, 3 will be enough. Well then, here you go. Oliver took out 3 blue stones from his bag and hesitantly handed them to the girl. Still doubting his purchase, the saleswoman quickly grabbed them, squeezing them in her fingers. Thank you for your purchase. By the way, I'm actually a disciple of the heavenly realm from Lu Shui Peak, and I'd like to ask you a few questions about the flower house. Oliver quickly put his brand new sword back into the sheath on his waist. Immortal cultivator, I actually know something about this place. The girl slightly opened her mouth in surprise as she looked at the guy. The girl leaned towards the boy, and in a barely audible whisper she said, The flower house is the largest brothel in this area, and recently many emaciated and dying men were found there. The authorities questioned the girls working there, and even the Flying Dragon squad checked every corner, and they all turned out to be human. But if that's really the case, how could they have emaciated all those men so much? There's definitely something fishy going on there. A soft smile formed on Oliver's face. He folded his hands in front of him and bowed slightly in gratitude. Thank you very much for the information. I will go there right now and check everything myself. The saleswoman smiled, the corners of her lips raised, creating kind lines on her face. Since you are a cultivator from the heavenly kingdom, I believe that you will bring them to light. Oliver stepped inside the establishment, feeling the light scent of summer flowers and sweet lotus tincture enveloping him. In the center of the hall, several geishas were dancing on the stage. And here it is quite empty. It seems that the emitted corpses greatly affected the flow of customers. Otherwise, it would be quite crowded here. The woman walked slowly down the wooden steps of the staircase, her light silk robe flowing over her body. At this rate, I'll have to close in less than 3 months. She put her hand to her head with a pitiful look, as if trying to calm her disturbing thoughts. Damn it, why have so many customers in my establishment already suffered? The woman noticed the guy standing at the door and, without thinking, rushed towards him, assuming that he was a client. Young sir, would you like a drink? Or perhaps to drown your hunger from the road? Invite a girl to you? A massage? Listen to a melody? Or perhaps some games? Our girls can do a lot. Oliver sniffed in displeasure and folded his hands in a welcoming gesture, bowing before her. I am a disciple of the heavenly kingdom from Lu Shui Peak. I have come to eradicate evil and restore justice. How miserable I am. Oh, immortal master, you have no idea what I had to go through. The woman began to cry theatrically, her eyes filled with tears. She pressed her lips together and, throwing her head back, said, I prayed for days and nights for a hero to come and finally save me. She suddenly pressed herself against the guy, placing her palm on his chest. Madam, calm down. Everything will be fine. First, tell me everything. He awkwardly patted her on the shoulder, not knowing how else to comfort her. 2 months ago, one of the customers was found dead in our girl's bed, which really scared the other staff. She sighed loudly, her voice shaking. At first, we thought he just had too much to drink or something, but since then, every 3 days, another customer has died. Oliver thoughtfully pressed his fingers to his chin, analyzing the information of the lady. And each of them had their buds cut out. How scary! But I constantly reported everything to the authorities. And as you know, Immortal Master, the flower house operates in the gray zone, between the authorities and the Flying Dragon. After several days of observation, they realized that all these murders are related to the flower house itself. So they left the solution to this problem to me, because of which I lost a whole bunch of silver. Every move she made was filled with such drama, as if she was playing the main role in a play. Oliver rubbed his forehead with the fingers of his right hand, frowning. This world hasn't discovered surgical organ transplants yet, So the thief who took all these kidneys was most likely a cultivator or a demon. But why kidneys? Wouldn't it have been more logical to take the heart? Is that what this demon is missing, so he decided to replenish the supply? Madam, when did the last murder take place? Oliver turned thoughtfully to the woman. The day before yesterday, so tomorrow another person will die in our establishment. How unhappy I am. Immortal Master, you must help me. Save the flower house. She leaned closer to Oliver, so that the fabric of her cleavage slipped to the side, revealing part of her chest. Madam, didn't I ask you to buy me some bird's nests from shopkeeper Wang? The blonde-haired girl slowly walked down the stairs. It's been a few days already. What are you waiting for? Melanie, things have been going pretty badly lately. You've only had 3 or 4 clients, and that's not enough to cover the cost of the bird's nests. Just be patient for a little while longer. Once the Immortal Master has sorted out our problem, I'll send someone to get them right away, the woman responded, and pointed at Oliver with her palm, and the girl turned sharply towards them. Immortal Master? Well then, I'll wait a few more days. Melanie is one of our best girls and she is a little spoiled. Her bad mood is not surprising because her monthly income has been significantly reduced. Please do not pay attention to her. The lady blushed slightly, looking at the guy with an innocent look. By the way, madam, could you prepare a guest room for me? Just a normal one. I need some time to make a plan. Today I would like to observe the work of the flower house to make sure everything goes smoothly. Oliver smiled, looking at the woman. Of course, no problem. Follow me, I will show you the way. She nodded and walked forward. Almost all of my girls' rooms have had bodies of men found in them. Only Melanie's room has never had such an incident. So her bad mood is understandable. Oliver bowed his head. Which of these rooms is hers? The lady pointed to the side with her palm. This one. Then I'll stay in the guest room today. He bowed his head in gratitude. And tomorrow morning I'll switch with Miss Melanie. Melanie, are you there? The woman walked up to the door and knocked on the woodwork several times. I'm going to bed. Did you want something, madam? The girl abruptly opened the door and looked angrily at the woman. Tomorrow morning, the Immortal Master will switch rooms with you, so you will need to pack your things as soon as you wake up. 2 pairs of eyes stared at Melanie, waiting for her answer. Catching a criminal is one thing, but a man occupying a lady's room is something else entirely. What kind of nonsense is this? Melanie shouted indignantly. I'm just worried that the criminal might harm you, otherwise I wouldn't ask you to do something like this. Oliver smiled softly to somehow calm the girl's anger. And you are very beautiful. Well, okay. Considering your attractiveness, I will allow you to stay in my chambers for a while. Melanie approached the guy and playfully ran her fingernail along his chin. An Immortal Master is different from other men. Behave yourself. The lady slapped the girl's palm sharply, making her take a few steps back from the boy. I beg your pardon? Girls from such places often lack tact. Please do not take this to heart. The woman led Oliver to her chambers. It's all right, Oliver responded. A couple of minutes later, the woman lightly pushed the doors to the guy's quarters, and they opened, letting the two inside. And here is your room, master. The location is just perfect. From here you can see the entire first floor. The lady grabbed Oliver's hand sharply, fingering his fingers. Her touch was both insistent and gentle. My life and my livelihood are in your hands. If there is another murder, even the few clients I have left will run away in all directions. I'll do my best, I promise, and now I need to get ready. Oliver began to persistently push the woman towards the exit, trying to speed up her steps and lead her out of the room. Immortal Master, the woman said in surprise, looking at the guy. Wait! As soon as she said these words, the door closed in front of her nose. Oliver walked to his desk and wearily sank into a chair. The boy carefully pulled out his new sword from its sheath, carefully grasping the hilt. If only I could return to my homeworld, I would never miss a single quest again. Now that I have a weapon, I will practice cultivation tonight. I need to thoroughly study all the techniques. The cultivation of the original owner of the body. I hope it will not be too difficult to deal with the criminal. Oliver began to swing his sword in different directions, while simultaneously trying to read the instructions he was holding in his other hand. According to the book, when you reach the foundation formation stage, you need to gather spiritual energy at the point on your forehead to sense the spirit of all things. As your cultivation grows, the recovery will become stronger, and eventually, it will reach a completely different level. Oliver lowered his sword, carefully examining the pages of the book. Even though I am at the Starfire stage, which is equivalent to foundation formation, I should be able to do it. Oliver closed his eyes and shadows began to appear in front of him, outlining the outlines of human figures. He suddenly opened his eyes. I really feel everything that exists. The boy began reading the book with renewed interest, plunging into a world of deep thought. It turns out that cultivation is so interesting. And why did the former owner of the body neglect cultivation? Oliver, immersed in reading a book on martial arts, began to perform martial movements in the air with his hands, practicing punches and blocks. A couple of hours later, the guy breathing heavily looked at his palm. I have almost completely learned the first 3 chapters of this technique. Oliver, lost in his thoughts, suddenly felt lightness in his body. He did not notice how his arms and legs changed, how his body became smaller and softer. Night came, which meant he turned into a puppy again. The little animal happily jumped onto the soft mattress of the bed. Its little paws slid deftly across the surface. Oh well, I've been on my feet all day anyway. I need to get a good rest so I can catch the criminal tomorrow. That night, when the moon was shining brightly in the sky, Adelaide, hovering above the forest, her long hair fluttering in the wind. Whether I run away or not, death awaits you anyway. Ha ha ha, you fell into our trap without realizing it. Gentleman Adelaide, more like a dummy, shouted one of the men who were chasing her. The girl hovering above the forest felt fear grip her heart. Their laughter echoed in the air. The demons following her trail caught up with her from above. Ha 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 ha, Adelaide, today your jade spirit body will become ours. She knew that simply running away was no longer of any use. Ida reached for her belt where her sword rested. A slight movement and she pulled it out. The moon sword of silk dew. Adelaide swung her sword, the blade glinting in the dim moonlight as a vortex of blue energy formed around her. The light emanating from the sword pierced the darkness of the night, blinding the demons. Their angry screams were silenced as a wave of power struck them like a thunderclap. The girl softly and smoothly landed on the ground and approached the demons, pointing the sharp end of the sword at them. Immortal, immortal lady, I beg you, spare us! One of them began to whine pitifully, raising himself up on his elbows. But the girl was merciless. With one swing of her sword, she struck down several demons. After defeating the demons, Ida climbed onto her sword, the blade responding to her touch, rising into the air. With a quick and confident movement, she pointed the sword upward, and it instantly shot up, leaving behind a sparkling trail of light. The speed was incredible, so it reached Zoyao County in a matter of minutes. The next morning, Melanie came out of her chambers to meet Oliver, her face lit up with a smile. Sir, how do you plan to catch the criminal? For now it's a secret, a smile played on the guy's face. The girl slowly walked past the guy, smiling at the corner of her lips. But the criminal cut out the kidneys of his victims, aren't you afraid? Melanie turned around, a sly hint flashing in her eyes. The smile on her face became playful, and her gaze became mysterious. Anyway, thank you for your help, sir. Oliver looked down at his feet, trying not to trip over the stone slabs, stepped into the girl's chambers and suddenly heard a voice from behind. Miss, unfortunately, we do not serve women. Oliver peered out from behind the door cautiously, curiously, his eyes widening in surprise. Why is Adelaide here? Shouldn't she be on a mission? Madam, there are almost no male visitors left here anyway. If a guest brought money, will you really drive her away? A smile played on Ida's face. She squeezed the silver stone with her fingertips and showed it to the woman. Ah, you're right. Would you like to have a bite to eat or stay the night? The lady immediately smiled, laughing a little. Adelaide looked at the woman standing in front of her with a slightly confused expression. Her eyes were filled with bewilderment, and her lips involuntarily parted. She felt a demonic aura in that place. Fortunately, it didn't smell of blood. Most likely it was a small demon. Oliver pressed his palms against the door, trying not to make a sound. He pressed his ear to the cold wood, listening to the conversation between the girl and the woman on the other side of the door. Who is in this room? Adelaide suddenly pointed to the door where Oliver was, eavesdropping on their conversation. Just one of the girls from our flower house. Who else could be there? The woman answered. You should be especially careful now. Demons have become more active lately. You yourself should understand that suspicious individuals can get in here too. Adelaide carefully examined the lady, squinting her brown eyes. Oliver let out a shuddering breath, placing his hand to his head, scratching the top of his head. Thanks for the warning, miss, he whispered. Oliver let out a heavy sigh as he fell onto the bed and covered his head with a pillow. When I went out into the outside world, the difference between the auras of a human and a demon is too obvious. I need to find a way to hide my demonic energy as soon as possible, otherwise Adelaide will figure it out when I return to the heavenly realm. Night slowly enveloped the city, plunging it into soft darkness. The streets, previously filled with noise and light, now became quiet and calm. The moon hung in the sky, illuminating the sidewalks with a thin layer of light. Oliver settled comfortably on the bed, his arms under his head, the pillow comfortably supporting his neck. Judging by what the owner of the flower house said, the attacks usually happen around this time. This demon killer should be showing up soon. Oliver suddenly heard a loud cry of, "Help!" A sound that pierced the silence of the night. His heart began to beat faster, and he sat up abruptly in bed, listening to the surrounding sounds. Running out of his chambers, Oliver saw a man holding Melanie by the neck, holding a sword in his hands. "Let me go," the girl said quietly, gasping for breath, clinging to the man's hand with her fingers, trying to break free. At Maloney's feet lay a corpse, seemingly dried up, with white eyes staring lifelessly into the void. Oliver swung his sword behind the man, its blade flashing in the dim light, cutting through the air with a loud whistle. "Now let her go quick." Oliver hit the man hard in the back with his sword. The sudden pain made him abruptly let go of the girl, and she fell onto the cold asphalt. Oliver landed softly on the ground, bending his knee to the ground, trying not to lose his balance. Luckily, this body has the blood of a demonic wolf flowing through it. At least there is some benefit from the former owner. He knew several self-defense techniques, and I also trained last night. "Damn it! Annoying cultivator!" The masked man frowned as he looked at Oliver. He quickly jumped away from the guy and rose up, escaping from the next attack. Oliver squatted down next to the girl and gently placed his palm on the top of her head. "Call someone for help and I'll catch the criminal in the meantime." Melanie pressed herself to the ground, screaming in fear. "Yes, okay!" The girl lying on the ground slightly raised herself on her elbows. Her voice trembled, but she tried to scream, to call for help. Her eyes ran around the trees around her, looking for at least someone. Adelaide ran out from around the corner of the flower house. She heard a cry for help, and without thinking rushed to the source of the sound and found Melanie lying on the ground. What happened? What's going on here? Her eyes were filled with confusion, and her eyebrows were drawn together. Ida leaned over the girl, placing her hand on her shoulder. "The immortal master chased after the criminal," she replied. Melanie, feeling Adelaide supporting her, fell to the ground, closing her eyes. She could not hold on any longer. "Immortal master? Did someone else take this low-level mission?" The lady's mouth slightly opened, and her brows furrowed even more. Oliver rushed after the man. He jumped over curbs, with each second increasing the distance between him and the fugitive. "Stop! You can't escape!" The guy flew through the narrow passage with the same speed, but finding himself in a dead end, he froze in place. In front of him was a blank wall, behind which there was no passage. Oliver looked around, but there was no one here, as if the man had evaporated into thin air. Judging from the fight just now, his cultivation level is close to the peak of foundation formation, or even the first stage of vein condensation. Things are taking a bad turn. Oliver panted heavily as he tried to catch his breath after running for a long time. Oliver took out a gold card, looked at it. Considering today the mission has already lasted 2 days, there are only 5 left, the guy thought. If I don't manage to complete the mission, then I'll be forcibly teleported back to the Heavenly Kingdom, in which case I'll have to resign myself and go the way that was prepared for the former NPC, die by Adelaide's sword. The guy made a sad face, opening his mouth in a theatrical sob. "Young Master Oliver, why don't you come in?" The girl's hand gently landed on the guy's shoulder. Not expecting this, Oliver suddenly jumped back, instinctively waving his hands. "Is something wrong?" asked the girl. She had gorgeous hair, and the girl was dressed in a beautiful dress, dark cherry color. "Young Master Oliver, are you all right?" "Miss, are you a demon fox? Aren't you afraid of me?" Oliver raised his eyebrows in surprise, frozen in place. "Is it worth it?" Tears welled up at the corners of her eyes. "Why should I be afraid of you?" "Oh, never mind. You called me Young Master Oliver. Have I met you?" Oliver waved his hands slightly and smiled awkwardly. "Ha ha ha. The young master decided to joke around with me again." The girl gently wrapped her hand around Oliver's elbow and laughed. "We're still in the human realm, so let's go to the demon market first." Oliver, with a slight trepidation, took a step forward, and together with his new acquaintance they stepped through the shimmering purple film of the portal. The world around Oliver was transformed. He found himself in an unusual place, in a demonic kingdom. Different demons were walking around him. All of them were dressed in bright clothes. "Miss, do you really know me?" Oliver turned to the girl, still not believing what was happening. "Young Master Oliver, please stop playing tricks on me. Everyone here knows who you are." The fox's cheeks blushed slightly. "Oh, young Master Oliver. Long time no see." One of the demons waved his hand at the boy in a friendly manner. 2 years ago, your aunt asked me to forge a set of chains for you that seal demonic energy. The payment was made, but you disappeared." The girl pointed her hand at the entrance to the tavern. "I never thought that I would run into you at the entrance to the demon market." Oliver, finding himself inside the tavern, felt 3 pairs of eyes on him. Young Master Oliver, 3 girls, triplets, looking exactly like a demonic forest, threw themselves at the guy. "Young Master Oliver, where have you been for the past 2 years? We kept your items safe and sound." "Master, why don't you want to take us with you?" The boy's cheeks turned bright red. He looked at the little girls in surprise. "What's going on here? Does the former owner of the body really have such a rich backstory? These chains can suppress the demonic aura. Only great perfection stage cultivators will be able to sense it." The demonic fox pushed a small box towards Oliver, smiling. "You 3 quickly return to the counter. Stop shirking your work. What's wrong with you?" The girl shouted sharply, looking sternly at the 3 girls, who nodded and said in unison, "Okay, madam." Oliver leaned over, examining the small box. "So everything is really paid for already? It means I can take them." The guy extended his palm to touch the treasured box. "Actually, young Master Oliver, you don't need to pay for anything in this store. Yours is extremely favorable to my Dean family." The girl touched the guy's palm with her fingers. "Actually, I would like to buy some pills, but I only have a few low-grade spirit stones left." Oliver abruptly withdrew his hand, smiling slightly. In the demon market, spirit stones are not particularly valuable, but since the young master often interacts with humans, you should have some human things with you. These can be worth quite a lot, the girl explained. "Unfortunately, I only have this pouch." Oliver pulled a small brown pouch out of his pocket, showing it to the demonic fox. "The pill shop is outside, next to the roadside stall run by the plump medicine spirit." The demonic fox folded her arms and leaned her elbows on the table. "Then I'll go there first later." Oliver turned around and walked towards the exit. "It must be here." The guy's gaze fell on a small table standing in the middle of the street. On it stood a cup with a spoon. "Is there anyone here?" Oliver shouted, putting his hand to his lips. "Sir, I'm here." The cup spoke sharply, looking at the guy. "So you are the owner of the store?" Oliver opened his mouth in surprise, looking down at a small wooden cup with eyes and a mouth. "That's right, sir. What do you want to buy?" she answered, putting her small hands on her hips. "I would like to exchange this bag for pills, something that can heal wounds, if you have any." The guy held out the bag to the pot, showing it from all sides. The pot began to stir with a spoon inside itself. The spoon moved on its own, and the pot made strange sounds, and then a small green ball flew out of its mouth. "Here! I am willing to exchange your pouch for a 9-cycle rejuvenation pill. It can revive even the dead. But you only have one with you, so unfortunately, there will only be 1 pill." The pot picked up the pill with its small handle and showed it to the guy. "Well, so be it. Next time I'll try to bring more." A smile lit up the guy's face and his eyebrows rose. Later in the evening, tired, Oliver returned home. He opened the door to his chambers and went inside. "Even though I lost my things, I gained real treasures. So it definitely can't be called a failure. First, I'll put the things away, and then I'll need to check the owner of the flower house. Another person died today, and something tells me that her business will not last long." Oliver suddenly felt the cold of a sharp sword on his shoulder and froze in place, hearing Adelaide's voice. "Where is the man you were chasing? Sister Adelaide, how did you end up here?" He suddenly recoiled, turning around, and saw a blonde girl in front of him. "You give off too much of a demonic aura." She narrowed her eyes, and her eyebrows drew together. "Must be leftovers from the fight with that criminal," Oliver stuttered, still looking at her sword with fear as it glinted in the moonlight. "I apologize for the inconvenience, big sister. That's how it is." Adelaide slowly put away her sword, raising it up to rest against her face. The girl standing next to him glared at Oliver, her lips pressed into a thin line and her eyebrows furrowed. "Are you sure?" Oliver became nervous, beads of sweat running down his face. "Yeah, follow me. We need to talk to the owner of the flower house. I will report the situation to the main pavilion, and ask for an extension of the mission. Oliver's eyes shone, and he turned sharply to the girl who was moving towards the entrance. Really? Ida turned around and snorted, "Enough chatter, we need to go." Adelaide and Oliver found themselves in Melanie's room. The girl was lying in bed. Her expression was relaxed, but her eyes were closed. Next to her sat the lady, leaning over the bed with a spoon in her hand. "Miss Melanie, can you describe the appearance of the attacker? That person, it seemed like he had no face. Just a frightening black void? It must have been a demon. Yes, that's right." Melanie exhaled heavily, her eyebrows slightly raised and her eyes widened. "He attacked while you were busy?" Ida and Oliver stopped by the bed. "Yes," the girl answered quietly. During sexual intercourse, the yang energy in men's kidneys reaches its peak, making them the perfect delicacy for demons and demon cultivators. Adelaide turned to the hero, who turned bright red like a tomato. "Is that so? I thought that Melanie would be safe if she switched rooms, so I let her accept a client." The lady lifted her handkerchief, wiping away her tears from her cheeks, and the others looked at her in surprise. "Greed has blinded me. Now that another person has died, the flower house in Zuoyao County will have to close. Gentlemen, are there any other places like this within 100 miles where men can relax?" Adelaide took a couple of steps forward. "No, just us," the woman replied, sobbing. "That's great. Then the criminal will return. But for now, most likely, he will lie low for a few days. My younger brother and I will stay here for a month, during which time I will pretend to be your employee, and he will be my client." Oliver froze in bewilderment, scrolling through Adelaide's older sister's words in his head. "What? Does your little brother not like something?" Adelaide turned around at the guy's question, frowning. "Of course not. I'll do as my sister says." Oliver immediately looked away so as not to meet her eyes. "Then, madam, please come up with a pseudonym for me." Adelaide turned to the woman, looking at her resolutely. "That way it will be easier for me to pretend to be your employee, so as not to attract unnecessary attention. I can't allow a master of your level to stoop to the level of a girl from my establishment." The mistress shook her head. "I'm just doing my duty to exorcise the demon, mistress. Don't get your hopes up, little brother. From this day on, you'll be living with me." Oliver's eyes widened even more, and he looked at Ida silently. "What? Me?" Oliver exclaimed, his eyebrows raising as he pointed his finger at himself. "Big sister, can I lose a kidney too?" The boy followed Adelaide to the exit, twisting his face in a sad grimace, thinking, "I can transform again at night, which is extremely bad. If I don't kill the criminal as soon as possible, then I will be the first to die." The next morning, after the turbulent events of the previous day, Oliver sat on a large rock near the lake, thinking, "I read the 4th chapter of the scripture, Universal Laws, Basic Elements. It wasn't that difficult after all." The guy clutched the book in his palm. "I need to increase my cultivation before I encounter that killer again. Next time I won't let him get away." Oliver, putting down the book he was trying to read, sat in the lotus position on the rock, closing his eyes. The text says how to open the Sea of Ki. You need to collect spiritual energy and direct it out. At that moment, when Oliver was deep in thought, a light breeze appeared around him, gathering energy into one. Behind the guy, unnoticed by him, stood Adelaide. She watched him, his meditation and improvement of strength. There was surprise in her eyes. "Since the day Oliver challenged me, he has changed a lot." She frowned as if trying to solve a riddle. "I first met him back then, 2 years ago. So why did he want to marry me as soon as he entered the heavenly kingdom?" The day, unnoticed by them, approached evening. The sun was already setting behind the horizon. The girl, sitting under a tree in the lotus position, was enveloped in a blue glow. Oliver, also sitting under the tree next to the girl, was improving his skills. His body was illuminated in red. Oliver opened his eyes suddenly and yawned loudly, folding his arms across his chest. Ida, who was sitting next to him, looked at him questioningly, her eyebrows slightly raised. Noticing the girl's gaze, Oliver awkwardly rubbed the back of his head and smiled brightly, revealing his teeth. The sun had already completely set behind the horizon. Night had come suddenly. The stars lit up in the sky. The air became colder. Oliver sat at the table in his chambers, hunched over, his body shaking and his lips pressed into a thin line, his fists clenched. "I have a feeling I'm going to transform again today." The door to Oliver's chambers creaked quietly, and Adelaide entered the room. The guy looked back and quickly got up from his chair. "Sister Ida, you're back already. Adelaide walked past Oliver and sat down on the chair opposite him. I watched you all day, and after sunset I went into town to take another look around. Oliver was surprised to hear the girl's words. All day? His mouth slightly open in surprise. Adelaide, without taking her eyes off Oliver, picked up the cup of tea that was on the table in front of him. She brought it to her lips and took a small sip. When I entered the store yesterday, I felt a faint demonic aura. The girl frowned for a moment and her eyes became stern. She put down her cup of tea and her hand rested on the table. She disappeared today. Oliver felt nervous. He felt the girl's gaze on him and felt awkward. Wasn't what she sensed yesterday my demonic aura? After I put on that bracelet, the demonic aura was suppressed, so she couldn't sense it. The girl glanced at the boy, then slowly stood up from the chair. Her movements were graceful. It must be the residual aura of that demon, so I decided to go around the entire city to check if there are any more traces of his energy. It's already late at night, so I'll go take a bath and go to bed. I'm still a guy, we can live in different rooms, isn't it awkward for you to take a bath? The guy closed his eyes, awkwardly rubbing his neck with his palm. You once said that you would become stronger and marry me, so why are you so embarrassed now? Adelaide came closer to Oliver, looking up at him. Then I was young and stupid and sometimes I said all sorts of nonsense. Don't take it to heart. Oliver let out a laugh. All sorts of nonsense, huh? Ida's face changed in an instant and she lowered her eyes to the floor. What if I let you swim with me? Adelaide looked up at Oliver again, the boy's cheeks turning bright red and his eyes widening slightly. The girl slowly began to undress. She carefully took off each piece of clothing. Brother, please prepare hot water for me. As the night approached, a calm atmosphere reigned in the room. The soft light of the lamp gently illuminated the space. Adelaide, behind the screen, began to slowly undress. Oliver, sitting next to the screen, poured water into a barrel. The water quietly and softly gurgled. Ida slowly walked up to the wooden barrel standing nearby. Steam from the hot water rose into the air. She let go of her hair, and it fell softly onto her shoulders. The girl lowered her legs into the hot moisture, feeling the warmth envelop her, relaxing every muscle. Then she completely immersed herself in the barrel. Brother Oliver, tell me, did you study anywhere before entering the Heavenly Kingdom? Soft drops of water rested on her shoulders as Adelaide turned to Oliver. No, I didn't have that opportunity, Oliver replied, talking to the girl through the screen. Well, I thought so, but don't you want to learn more? I can help with that. Her palms slowly stroked the skin, the scent of herbs and oils wafting through the air. But personal training is prohibited. Oliver, with a slight smile on his lips, approached the screen. He looked behind it, leaning forward a little. How long do you plan on staring? Ida turned around sharply and looked at the guy indignantly. Her eyebrows furrowed sharply, and her lips pressed into a thin line. Sorry, I got a little nervous. The guy suddenly covered his eyes with his palms. Panic was noticeable in his movements as he hid behind the screen. I won't be your teacher, I just need to make sure that you won't hold me back when we catch the criminal. Is that understood? Steam was gathering around Adelaide. Don't worry, if anyone asks, I'll say I learned it from the scriptures. Oliver swallowed the lump in his throat, still embarrassed by his actions. Oliver was standing in the center of the room when suddenly his body started shaking. He felt a wave of heat run down his spine and noticed his tail slowly extending out of his back. Damn! I forgot about the transformation. Sister Ida, I'm feeling hungry, I'll go find a shop to eat some noodles. Adelaide raised her head in surprise when she heard Oliver's voice. The guy, feeling how his body continued to change, could no longer stay within the cramped walls of the room. Grabbing the door handle, he abruptly opened the door and ran out into the street. We need to hurry. The landscape around him changes. Trees fly past, and Oliver, who was just a man not long ago, feels like he has already become a snow-white puppy. The boy, who found himself in the body of a dog, carefully stepped along the soft forest path, his new paws quietly touching the ground and his ears perked up. What is that smell? How delicious it smells! A puppy's head poked out from the thick bushes, his large, expressive eyes widened in surprise as he looked ahead with interest. Found it! In a small clearing in front of the puppy sat a girl, comfortably settled by the fire. The fire crackled, and above it on a spit a fish was roasting. Next to her, curled up, sat a ginger cat. Noticing the puppy, the blue-haired girl smiled softly and took off her hat in greeting. Puppy, are you hungry? Oliver looked around, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. Suddenly stopping, he poked his paw into his chest in surprise as if asking, "Me? Yes, yes, I'm talking to you, baby." The girl pulled her hat down onto her back. "A collar? So you have a master? Then you shouldn't be wandering around in the forest at this hour. If you get lost, your master will be very upset." She leaned over to the puppy and with a smile handed him the fish, carefully skewered on a spit. The puppy smiled happily, looking at the golden crust of the fish. "Help yourself, you'll like it." The little animal, without thinking for a second, bit the fish with his teeth. His little teeth confidently held the fish, and joy overwhelmed him. But suddenly the puppy's attention switched. A ginger cat sat nearby, with a displeased expression on her face. She carefully watched the dog, showing her claws. "Well, how do you like my mistress's fish? Is it tasty?" The puppy, feeling that the cat's attention was completely focused on him, grinned. He firmly stepped on her paws and carefully poked his nose into hers. "Are you really jealous of your mistress?" She looked into his eyes with all her anger. They sparkled like two bright lights in the darkness. At that moment, she stretched out her front paws and showed her sharp claws. "I am a spirit animal, not some mongrel. How can I even be jealous?" At first, they circled each other, exchanging jabs and menacing glances. The cat hissed menacingly, while the dog barked, trying to take control of the situation. They pounced on each other. The girl, seeing this, sharply screamed, "Stop it!" She took a step forward, suddenly tripped over a stone that was hiding in the grass, and the girl flew down. At that moment, her dress caught on a protruding branch of one of the trees. With a sharp click, it was torn off her body. The animals stopped abruptly, their gazes instantly directed towards the girl lying on the ground. She was naked, her body writhing in pain. Oliver stared at the sight in amazement, his mouth open, and he let out a surprised woof, and a thin stream of blood flowed from his nose. However, the next second he was hit in the face by a ginger cat who meowed, telling him to quickly turn away, and she called him a pervert. Oliver, in his dog form, let out a long, quiet howl and closed his eyes, tears streaming down his cheek as he did so. The girl, who was still lying on the ground with one eye open, told herself that she should get rid of her stupid habit of trying to reconcile everyone. And then she sat down on the ground, covering her nakedness with a cloak that she had taken in advance because it gets cold at night. Looking at the puppy, she noticed that his nose was bleeding, and she asked worriedly what was wrong with Rim. Covering the dew with his paws, Oliver thought that this was called blood flowing, and he was still young, so he didn't see this often. Taking out a handkerchief, the girl began to wipe the puppy's white muzzle, saying that it was good that the bleeding had stopped, but it would still be better for him to drink hot water when he returned, and he thought that boiling water could cure all diseases. The ginger cat, her face dark with anger, meowed, telling him that she knew why his nose was bleeding, and therefore he didn't even dare think about it. And Oliver only asked with a grin what she would do to him. Standing on her feet, the girl quietly asked how things were at home now, and then she said that it didn't matter, because her father and mother didn't care about her, so she didn't care either, and the animals were chewing fish at that time. Oliver asked the cat what was wrong with her owner, to which she replied that she was being forced to marry the heir of another clan of beast tamers. Then the puppy asked if she had simply run away. The cat replied that she had no choice because her fiancé was so big and strong, but it didn't matter because she would soon be returned home anyway. Suddenly, the girl heard some rustling in the bushes. Digging through her cloak, she ordered whoever was in the bushes to come out, and then she took a whip from her cloak and swung it, thinking that it could have been her parents. But as it turned out, it was Adelaide who immediately realized that the girl was from the clan of tamers, and therefore it was not surprising that there was so much demonic energy around. Oliver immediately froze when he noticed her. Adelaide also noticed the puppy and thought that now it was clear why she hadn't seen him. He had simply gone for a walk. She remembered her words about him not being allowed to enter the student's dormitory if he didn't have an owner. Another girl asked her who she was. Adelaide asked her if she should introduce herself first, if she was going to forgive him for something like that. Then the girl listened to her and said that her name was Lily, and she was traveling with her pet. Another one also introduced herself, saying that she was Adelaide from the heavenly realm of Lu Shui Peak. Hearing this, Lily suddenly jumped up to her with a joyful expression on her face and asked again. Oliver wondered how she managed to meet her fan in the forest. Lily, turning away with a red face, told the girl that she had admired her for a long time. Taking a knife out of her coat, she asked if the girl could leave her an autograph. And then she took off her clothes and asked Adelaide to leave her autograph on her back. Hastily throwing a cloak over the girl's shoulders, the other said that she would rather give her something of her things. Lily did not ask further, but only thanked her. And then Adelaide handed her a comb, which the other looked at with sparkling eyes. and then she jumped up and down joyfully with a comb in her hands. Oliver, in a panic, thought that it was time for him to leave here. But suddenly, when he was about to leave, Adelaide called out to him, causing him to freeze. He thought that he was wearing a demonic bracelet, so she couldn't sense his demonic energy. The girl crouched down to be closer to the puppy and touched his collar, asking the dog if he really had an owner. The puppy shook his head, to which the girl then said with a smile that then he must be often given gifts since he is so handsome. And then she tied some kind of cord around his collar. And then she stood up and told Lily that since this demonic energy was coming from her pet, then let's go. And she would also take this dog with her because she knew her. The girl sadly asked if she was leaving already. In response to this, the other said that she was staying at a flower house nearby. Then Lily exclaimed with a smile that she would go with her. But still leaving Lily, Adelaide returned with Oliver to her chambers. The girl's hands gently laid the puppy on the bed, to which he wondered why this was happening again. Adelaide said with a smile that since the puppy was here, she would not let Oliver disturb them. And then she said that she thought he wouldn't come today, and she hoped he wouldn't have any trouble surviving until tomorrow morning. And hearing that, the boy wondered if he was really that bad compared to the puppy. The girl, with a contented smile on her face, hugged him and noted that his fur was so soft and he didn't smell. Oliver thought that everything that was happening was so cute that it even made him feel sick. And then the girl picked him up in her arms like a child and carried him to bed. Putting one hand forward, she shot out power from her finger, causing a blue light to appear on the wall. The girl said that she closed all the doors and windows so that this guy would not come in. In a panic, Oliver thought about how he could get out of here before the morning, when she froze all the doors. And then he immediately thought about what kind of situation might happen the next morning. Upset, he asked himself why all this was happening to him. However, after that, he noticed that the girl's body was very soft, and his face turned slightly red. He pressed himself against the girl's soft chest, but almost immediately it dawned on him, and he asked himself what he was doing. But then the girl said that she thought the puppy was a loner, but it turned out that he loved hugs. The boy looked away shyly, thinking that he was attracted to Adelaide's body, and therefore he couldn't help himself. But fortunately, he was in the form of a beast, because if he were a human, he would have already died. And then he thought about what would happen if one day Adelaide found out that this puppy was him. Still pressed against the girl's body, he wondered if the puppy could possibly have bad intentions. And in general, he was the victim here, because even an ordinary person couldn't resist something like that. And then, having found an excuse for himself, he happily pressed himself against the girl. Smiling, the girl thought about what name she should give him. But you can only give a name to your pet. So she asked the puppy if he wanted to be her pet. The puppy looked away and barked softly, and Oliver thought that if he agreed, he wouldn't be able to leave the mountain, but he couldn't refuse, because it seemed like the girl would be upset if he refused. Adelaide said that she knew he was still young and did not want to leave his parents, so he might agree later. The girl continued to say something, but Hai didn't listen to her, but only thought that apparently everything didn't turn out so badly, and he barked happily. He thought about how Adelaide treated animals and people differently. She was always cold to the latter and did not let them near her. Smiling, the girl told the puppy that it was time to go to bed, because she still had to teach Oliver one technique tomorrow, and she hoped that he would not master it quickly. Hugging the girl happily, Oliver wondered if she really didn't trust anyone or if he was just paranoid. But suddenly he thought sharply that all this had distracted him from the really important matter. The door was still locked, they were holding him in their arms, and if tomorrow morning a naked guy turns up in the girl's bed, it would be the end for him. He thought that he was unable to destroy this technique, and therefore could not leave. He mentally prayed for help, and then thought about why he had to die now, and not in 6 months. He had not yet had time to enjoy this world. Several hours passed. The moon was shining brightly in the sky. Oliver still hadn't slept, and that's why he had huge dark circles under his eyes. Looking at the girl, he noticed that she had already fallen asleep, and therefore it was time to act. With a sharp leap, he jumped off the bed and landed on the stone floor. As he approached the locked door, he thought that there was only one thing left for him to do. His face took on a serious expression as he thought that his only option was to dig. Oliver began to actively dig a hole near the wall, thinking that he should be done in about an hour. But suddenly Adelaide's voice was heard behind him, asking what he was doing there, causing the puppy to freeze. He whined pitifully and turned around with tears in his eyes, wondering what he should do and why she wasn't sleeping. But then the girl said that she seemed to understand, and he was asking to go to the toilet, and therefore he would let him out. Oliver nodded vigorously and wondered if it was really that simple. Adelaide waved her hand, causing flashes of light to creep up her arm, and then the door swung open. And the next second, Oliver flew out of the room like a bullet, creating a gust of wind. However, the girl did not suspect anything, but only thought that the puppy had apparently been patient for a long time. She turned around and began to walk back towards the bed. But suddenly she turned back sharply, as she noticed a demonic aura. And then she quickly jumped out of the room and climbed onto the roof in a few jumps. Crouching down by the tree, Oliver, breathing heavily, said that he had finally gotten out. He folded his paws across his chest and said that it wouldn't be cool if he returned to human form right in the forest, but it would be better than dying. Putting his paw under his chin, he said that he needed to find that demoness and get some new clothes. And then after some time he found himself somewhere else, with lanterns shining around. Looking around, he asked where the breath that was here last time was. He remembered the words of Melanie, who asked him why he was asking her about this, because each of the demons could find an entrance, and then she said that apparently he had forgotten a lot, even his essence. She said that although the demon race and human race had reached a certain agreement, there were still those among the human cultivators who hated them, so the entrance could not be fixed at one point. But all the places where the passage opened were not that far from each other. Oliver sighed and said it looked like he would have to look. But suddenly he noticed how Dina passed right over his head. Flashing from above, she flew past him in the back, and Oliver noticed only her legs sticking out of the wall. And then the girl disappeared from this wall, and the guy happily thought that he had just walked out of the passage. Suddenly Adelaide appeared in the air, but the puppy did not notice her. It only seemed to him that her scent appeared nearby. Turning around, he winced as he noticed that she was flying straight towards him. And then he quickly jumped from his place and also entered the passage in the wall. With a graceful movement, the girl landed on the stone floor and noted that the demonic aura suddenly disappeared. And so she thought that, apparently, the entrance to the demon market was somewhere around here. Turning around, the girl, swearing quietly, said that this bastard was lucky only this time. Walking further away from this place, she told herself that someday she would definitely get to their world and know all its secrets. When the guy walked through the passage, he was immediately met by girls with joyful questions about what he wanted to play today. Oliver had regained his human form, and now he stood before all these women completely naked, and they only laughed, saying how funny he was. Scratching his neck and blushing, the guy said with a smile that he was also glad to see them all. And he told himself that it was good that he had entered the demon territory before the transformation. And then he imagined what would have happened if he had been so unlucky. And he immediately imagined Adelaide with a sword in her hand, ready to pierce him. And then the guy quickly ran away from the girls, not forgetting to say goodbye to them. A few minutes later, he ran to some building, where he burst in with a loud cry for Dina's sister to help him. The girl looked out from behind the counter uncertainly, and then looked at the guy, and her face became more and more surprised with each passing second. She asked him what was wrong with him. The guy awkwardly replied that he had suddenly returned to human form and had no clothes on him. The girl sighed tiredly, and the guy wondered why she was reacting like that. And then she raised her hand and put up 2 fingers, which instantly lit up with a red flame. And then she put her hand forward and clothes appeared on the guy's body. After looking at his new look, Oliver noted how cool it was. And then the girl told him that he should go to the demon market and buy himself a spatial artifact. Then the guy asked what it was. Then the girl explained that this was an item that allowed him to store other objects in itself. And a low-quality artifact would be quite suitable for storing several things. In the human realm, such a stone would cost about 10,000 spirit stones, and if he could get human things better than that bag, then perhaps he could exchange them for the stone. Oliver grabbed his chin thoughtfully, and then he told her with a smile that maybe he would do it another time. And then he asked her where the girl's sister was. Looking away, she replied that she was not home at the moment. As he was leaving, Oliver asked the girl to say hello to her sister, and that he had things to do now, in response to which the girl said goodbye to him. After leaving the room, the guy began to walk around the demonic market. Suddenly, he stopped and, folding his arms across his chest, he remembered that Adelaide had chased a criminal, and he had brought her to the demon market. But why did he come from the direction of the flower house? He said that he also didn't know if she had left, but fortunately the exit was now in a different place, so he was unlikely to run into her. The guy left the demon market and reached Adelaide's house, and then he knocked on the door of her room, calling her. As he continued calling the girl, he thought that he needed to be bolder. After a few knocks, the door finally swung open, the girl was sitting at the table, and Oliver exclaimed that he knew she was not sleeping. Holding a cup in her hand, Adelaide glanced at the guy and asked him how it happened that he went out for noodles and came back in new clothes. Oliver, explaining the situation, told her that he had been accosted in the shop by a street urchin, but he had helped him. But the man had gotten angry and thrown a bowl at him. But the shop owner had thanked him and lent him clothes, and he would return them tomorrow. The girl noted that this was an act worthy of a Taoist, And then she said that he did not have to sleep with her tonight. The guy asked if this would affect her plan to find the criminal, and he himself thought that it was even for the best. Adelaide said that a demoness came to the flower shop tonight, but she wounded her and she escaped. She went in pursuit, but the demoness managed to hide in the demon market. The guy asked again in surprise, and the girl asked what was wrong. Oliver folded his arms and asked if this was the same criminal who was cutting people. But it was not the time yet, and he had wounded him in that skirmish, so why was he in such a hurry? The girl said that this could be precisely because the guy had hurt him, and that was why he dared to do this, because this is not forgiven. And then she said that it was late and it was time for them to go to bed. Bowing respectfully, Oliver wished the girl good night, and then he went out onto the balcony and looked at the street where people were still walking. He wondered why the criminal was so obsessed with his goal that he would even risk his life but not give up on his plan. He thought that all this was some kind of nonsense. He chuckled in annoyance and thought about how there was another one that didn't make sense. He leaned on the railing, covered his face with his hand, and wondered why the girl was so gentle with the puppy, but felt such disgust towards him. He sighed, rested his chin on his hands, and said that if she had treated him even a tenth as that when he was human, then maybe he wouldn't even have to die. But Adelaide wasn't particularly fond of people, and then he exclaimed that he had enough of thinking about it, because tomorrow he still had to train, so it was time to sleep. The next day, Adelaide and Oliver went to training, but there they met Lily. The girl said that she also wanted to go to training with them. Adelaide, politely addressing the girl, said that her clan and their sect were two completely different factions. Lily came to her senses and said that it was so, as if she had just realized it herself. And then she sincerely apologized for not thinking about it, but she just wanted to see each other again. But it was so difficult to do, and then she said that she would not interfere then, and hoped that they would meet for dinner. Adelaide thanked her with a gentle smile. And then the girl and the guy went somewhere into the forest. They walked past a river, and the girl asked the guy how far he had advanced in cultivation. Looking away and scratching his neck, he said that he had only broken through to the chi refining stage the day before yesterday. He smiled awkwardly and said that it was his fault that he had practiced so little, and he himself thought that since his energy and ki had the same aura, the girl should not notice anything. Adelaide replied that it didn't matter, because if he had reached the first stage of ki purification, he would already be able to learn the techniques, which is what they would do today. Turning to face him and standing in front of him, she asked him if he would be able to cross to the other bank, and then she asked him if he remembered the lesson from the outer sect, to which Oliver hesitantly said that he couldn't, and he had never been to class before. He wondered if the girl was going to teach him how to walk on air. Then Adelaide said that she would only show him once, so he had to pay attention. Today, they would learn the first style of the cloud step technique, boat floating on the water surface, and if he mastered it, he would be able to float in the clouds. Gracefully raising her leg, she began to tell, and said that on the right one needs to direct the UI to the legs. One needs to imagine that they are two fleshly boats, and the energy under them is a current. He should learn to control this so-called current, so that it forms a stable platform. And then she stepped into the water and said that after that you need to smoothly push the ki out of your body, like a leaf on the surface of a lake that rises and falls on the waves. The body should become like a leaf that moves with the flow of ki. Oliver thought about how the body of the previous owner comprehends the Tao dozens of times faster than the bodies of ordinary people, and therefore, he simply has to understand what he is being told. And then orange flashes burst from under his feet. Adelaide pushed off the ground and told the boy to remember that it was all about ease and control. And then she stepped onto the water and said that water is malleable, it can penetrate through stones, and his body should become like it. She stood firmly on the water and said that then the guy could walk on water. Then, with a small splash, Oliver also jumped into the water and stood on it. Standing steadily on the water, he exclaimed that the girl explained everything perfectly. Adelaide was somewhat surprised. She asked him if he already knew how to do it, but just didn't tell her. Oliver asked her what she was talking about, and then he himself discovered with surprise that he was standing on water. He spread his arms out to the sides and said that he really didn't know how to do it, and he himself thought that this body is capable of learning everything it hears. So why didn't its previous owner do it for 2 years? This time was wasted. Adelaide thought that she had been learning the first style for 7 days, but he was able to master it in an instant, so he wasn't even a genius, he was something more. Noticing the surprised expression on the girl's face, the guy panicked and thought that she was thinking about the same thing he was. And then he smiled and said that it seemed like he was just lucky, but he still needed to train a lot to reach the same level as hers. The girl said that the guy could study some more, and she could go to the hotel, and she herself was thinking that she should report such a gift so that he could be made an internal disciple. And then a sword flew through the air behind her. Adelaide stood on it to fly away, and the guy said goodbye to her. And then the girl's sword suddenly flew out of place, raising a huge wave. The guy, completely drenched in water, thought that he seemed to have made a mistake in his plan. As he walked ashore, he thought that soon everyone would find out about his talent. Therefore, it seems that I will have to look for an item to hide my aura in the demon market, and I will have to be even more careful. Adelaide reached her chambers after some time. She knelt on the bed with a glittering sign rising above her head. Suddenly, a voice was heard from this sign, which asked her what had happened to the student. The girl asked if her master could take one outer disciple from his sister, the head of Lushui Peak, to which the voice said that it was possible. But did he really have someone in mind? Adelaide replied that it was, and that it was a student named Oliver. The sign asked again, and then she said that she knew him and had even heard about his meetings with the girl. The girl, slightly blushing, became indignant and asked her master to stop listening to gossip, as it would only waste time, and she answered that this gossip was very interesting. And then it wasn't the teacher who asked how a girl with such an attitude would find a life partner. Turning away, Adelaide asked her master where her partner was. The teacher shouted at the girl to shut up, and then the sign began to dissipate into the air, and the woman said that she still needed to talk to her sister. And then with a soft thud, the sign hit the table. Adelaide sighed wearily. Half a month passed, and nothing happened in the flower house, except that there were more visitors. The house manager greeted the guests with joy, thinking that thanks to Oliver, things were going well again. Oliver and Adelaide were standing on the balcony. The girl said that she had seriously injured her last time, and that a long time had passed. However, it was still too early to relax. The guy asked her why she was so obsessed with the flower house. He said that the one they were looking for was a demon, so she could have gone to any other place. So why would she risk coming here again? Adelaide replied that the demoness was somehow connected to the flower house, and if she was caught, the truth would come out. Suddenly, a loud cat cry was heard above their heads. As it turned out, it was the already familiar ginger cat. And then the cat rushed down from the balcony, and Lily noted that Bubinchik detected a demonic aura. The girl said that this demon is very cautious, and it seems that she somehow suppresses her aura. Adelaide asked again, and the guy hearing this tensed up, and then he looked away in panic, thinking that it couldn't be him because there was a bracelet on his neck. And he is afraid that the criminal has already blended into the crowd, and therefore it is no longer possible to detect his location by the demonic aura. Lily exclaimed that one must not act thoughtlessly and involve ordinary people in this. Adelaide replied that everything was fine. When she killed someone, there would be an immediate surge of aura, and they would find someone else right away. She exclaimed that she would find her and grind her into dust. Meanwhile, Melanie was with a man, and she noted with a smile that he had already drunk a lot. She decided to take him upstairs to rest, with Oliver standing next to them. The guy quietly said that he hadn't seen Melanie for several days, but she was already accepting clients. And then he began to read the poem. The drunken years carry us away without wine, saying goodbye forever, like an expensive, tart wine, and we are not given the ability to understand its taste. Adelaide approached the guy and asked him if he could write poetry, to which he only smiled awkwardly and said that he wasn't really that good at it. Meanwhile, the man clung to Melanie, happy that everything was fine at the flower house now. He asked her to sing his favorite song, and in the meantime, he led her into the room, Oliver watching them. The girl said that they still had a lot of time, to which the man laughed, and the girl looked over her shoulder straight at Oliver. The guy frowned and looked at her as well, but said nothing. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. The guy thought that the girl's aura was no longer the same as before, and why did he feel that she was familiar to him? The guy asked Adelaide if a demon would come here knowing they were here. Couldn't she just find the guy and knock him out and do it the old-fashioned way? The girl asked what the old-fashioned way meant. Then, with a predatory smile, the guy explained that this is when she uses a knife, not magic, and then no one can detect her demonic aura. The girl thought that if this were so, then many visitors would have died long ago, and this demon was very smart, and she chose the most crowded place, and therefore it would not be so easy to find her. Oliver asked if it wasn't more pleasant to kill a person right under everyone's nose. And then he quietly said that he seemed to understand where he had encountered this aura, but he hoped that he had imagined it. And then he said that he wanted to check something. The girl asked what it was, and Oliver, instead of answering, suddenly pushed off the ground. And he quickly ran somewhere, and he ran straight to that very door that had recently slammed shut. And through it, a dark silhouette was visible. Pinkoff opened the door and the guy burst into the room, and he could immediately see a man lying on the floor in a pool of his own blood, and next to him was Melanie. The girl with a knife in her hands asked him what he was doing. But suddenly, from somewhere behind, stones flew into her hand, causing her to let go of the knife. As it turned out, it was Adelaide. Melanie's body shook slightly. Tears came to her eyes and she called out to Oliver. The guy didn't say anything, but Adelaide hurried to run closer. But the next second, Melanie had already jumped out of the window. She ran quickly down the narrow street, pushing people aside, Adelaide jumping out of the window after her, ordering her to stop. Oliver took out some kind of bag, and from it he took out some kind of small green ball. Crouching closer to the man's body, he put the ball in his mouth and said that he didn't care about him, but he didn't want another life to be taken. Breathing heavily, Melanie ran faster and faster. Suddenly, Adelaide's cry was heard, asking where she was going. Lily and Adelaide were chasing the girl, and the second told the other not to lose sight of her, and she would go to intercept. A frightened Melanie turned around to look at the girls who were chasing her. Adelaide raised her hand and held out 2 fingers, which immediately lit up with a blue light. And then blue flashes appeared in the air, and she pushed off from the ground. She landed sharply and rose into the sky, flying over the other girl, and she turned in the air. And then she landed gracefully right in front of the one she was chasing. Melanie froze, realizing that she could no longer escape. Adelaide took out her blue sword and asked the demon if she really thought she could escape again. She cried out sternly that it was her time to die. The girl, in the same stern voice, called on the demon to surrender. Behind her ran Lily, who lifted her cat by the paws. And then, bending down to the ground, she suddenly launched her cat forward. Something exploded in the air above everyone else's heads, creating a ball of fog. And then a huge tiger's body, its eyes sparkling red, fell to the ground. Melanie stood there, stunned, her mouth wide open. The tiger, opening its mouth wide, let out a deafening roar, and the girl could not hold back a frightened scream. Lily happily exclaimed how cool it was. But suddenly Oliver appeared and asked Adelaide to wait. He stopped abruptly in front of her and shouted at them not to kill her. And then he said that first he needed to find out why she did it. And he himself thought that he couldn't yet admit that he recognized her as Mrs. Dina. Otherwise, he would be able to explain their relationship. Turning to the demon, Adelaide finally asked her what her goal was and where the real Melanie was. Melanie quickly looked away instead of answering. Then the girl, clutching the sword tighter, said that even if she didn't tell, it would be enough for her that she had killed dozens of people and justice would be done. Melanie asked again. And then she asked if she really thought that because she was human, the heavens favored them, and other races deserved only death. Humans have killed many demons for no reason, so what's the point of doing justice? Adelaide objected, saying that she had killed people after all. With tears in her eyes, Melanie screamed that they deserved it. Stepping forward, Oliver told Adelaide that this was his mission, and so he would handle it himself. She asked him if he could deal with this demon. Frowning, the guy replied that he could. And then he went straight towards the demon, and the girl said after him that she would keep an eye on him from here. Oliver, having already turned to the demon, asked her why she killed people. Dinah in Melanie's body thought that Oliver was now this woman's student, and therefore did not want to reveal his identity. She thought that his family was their benefactor, and therefore she could not put his situation in order, and suddenly purple flashes shone around her body. And then a long, fluffy foxtail appeared in the air, and Dinah appeared before everyone. Her cheeks were red, and tears were shining in her eyes. Then she closed her eyes and said that 2 years ago she saved a student in Zhuoyao County. Sighing quietly, the guy thought tiredly that he knew what was going to happen now. Baring her teeth, Dinah said that she had saved him from the robbers, given him gold and jewelry, and he had said that he wanted to go to the capital to take the exam, and she had thought that he was a man of honor, and that was why she had helped him. But her friends told her that he didn't study at all, but constantly hung around brothels. He spent all his time and all the money that she gave him on these fallen women. Her eyes glowed red and her body was shaking as she said that she then went to the flower house to find out the truth. And then she saw him having fun with this Melanie. He accused her of being a demon and even tried to kill him. Following the tip given by this man, Long Xiangxi found her and her clan, and for many hours they tortured her relatives and then killed them. But fortunately, a great master helped them, and she and her 3 sisters escaped. With tears in her eyes, she said bitterly that everyone else had died, and yet they were innocent. And then she angrily exclaimed that that was why she was killing people and let them die without honor. Wiping away her tears with her hand, she said that she had already said everything she wanted to say, and she still couldn't do it, and therefore they could kill her if they wanted to. Turning to Adelaide, Oliver asked her what she thought about it. Stepping forward, the girl replied that it was his mission, and therefore it was up to him to decide her fate. And then she stood with one foot on her sword that was hanging in the air. Lily jumped onto the back of her ginger cat, which was still enormous in size, and they also prepared to leave. Adelaide flew into the air in a bright blue flash, and Lily hurried after her. The guy turned to Dina and thanked her for helping him hide his identity. Still with red eyes from the hearing, she turned to the boy and said that she should be thanking the master. But suddenly a sharp feeling pierced the girl's body, and she opened her eyes in surprise. And then she staggered and fell right into the arms of Oliver, who stood in front of her. Looking up at the boy, she said in a weak voice that the same master who saved her and her sisters was from Oliver's family. The boy's eyes widened in surprise and his mouth dropped open, and he thought that now it was clear why she had said that his family was her benefactor. Dina, in the same weak voice, told the guy that her life was now in his hands. The guy, still hugging the girl, said that Adelaide would not forget if he just let her go, and therefore there was only one way to save her. The girl, clearly not expecting this, looked at him in surprise and asked in confusion what kind of method this was. When he came face to face with her, the guy asked her if she would become his pet. Meanwhile, the manager of the flower house sighed, glad that it was good that no one died, and behind her, some guy was carrying the same man who was almost stabbed to death today. The flower house manager fell to the floor and hugged Adelaide's legs and said that she was so glad she was there, otherwise they would have to go through those horrors again. Adelaide looked at the pool of blood that the man had left behind, and she thought that she couldn't believe that he had survived that much blood loss. And the woman noticed that Oliver had also returned. Waving his hand to the girl, the guy said that he was finished. And then, turning to the woman, he said that he had dealt with the demon, and therefore she would not bother them anymore, and he also sent people for Lily so that she would not be harmed. Now the flower shop manager rushed to hug the guy's legs, thanking him for his help. After a few seconds, she finally got to her feet and said that she had prepared something for them as a reward, and therefore she would now send someone for it. Adelaide asked the guy again what it meant that he had tamed this demon, and then she said that the guy was still too soft-hearted. Oliver said that he was well aware that this demon had blood on her hands, but that was only because she was the first to experience betrayal, and these people were bad. The girl objected, saying that these people were not bad, but they were not good either, and even if they had taken the path of evil, it was not for the demon to judge. Frowning, she asked the guy again what he did with the demon. Showing the girl the red bracelet on his wrist, he said that this demon was now his spirit pet. And then he looked at his bracelet with a smile and said that now she would spend her whole life atoning for her sins. After a moment of silence, Adelaide turned around abruptly and said that now that the mission was accomplished, they must return to the heavenly kingdom to get their points. After this, Oliver breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that, fortunately, the girl had not told him anything. The next day, Lily, sitting on her pet, was preparing to go on her way. She anointed Adelaide and Oliver with her hand, saying that her parents already knew where she was, and therefore it was time for her to leave. The girl and her cat burst into tears as they said goodbye to the girl and the boy. And then she galloped away, raising a cloud of dust behind her. Adelaide told the boy to come with her, and she had already completed her mission, and therefore she needed to return to the heavenly kingdom by evening. Sighing, the guy agreed. And he himself thought that because of Dina, the girl became even colder towards him. But in any case, after completing 4 missions, he was going to leave the heavenly kingdom, and therefore this was even for the best. The next day, Oliver had already reached the heavenly kingdom, and now he was walking around the Palm Pavilion. Alice, who was walking next to the guy, asked if it was true that the guy had returned yesterday with Adelaide. The guy noted that the girl already knew this, to which she happily noted that she was, after all, the editor-in-chief. And then she said that she promises that if he tells her anything else, she won't write about it. And then she said that, unlike others, she does not think that Adelaide and Alexander are an ideal couple, because the girl is not interested in him at all, and therefore Oliver has a chance. The guy noted that she had already told him about this last time, to which she said that if there was something in Adelaide's eyes, she would have seen it by now, to which the guy, with an awkward smile on his face, said that he had only helped Adelaide with her mission. And then he thought about how he remembered that in the game, his character was constantly pestering Adelaide, and that's why she decided to be with Alexander. Could it be that her love line is connected with the advances of a non-player character, and it was he who pushed her towards Alexander? The guy thought that he was already tired of the fact that he could not remember the details of the game. As he passed the doors, the guy noticed that they had already arrived. Alice asked him to tell her if he remembered anything else, to which the guy did not agree, but did not refuse either. And then he went into his room and went to his bed, on which the blanket lay strangely. The guy plopped down tiredly on the bed, but suddenly he jumped out of bed in fright, and someone's eye appeared under the blanket. Having landed on the floor, the guy immediately reached into his clothes to get a weapon and attack the uninvited guest. But suddenly he blushed a little and made an idiotic expression, realizing that there had been some person on his bed all this time. As it turned out, it was Beatrice, who had already crawled out from under the blanket. There was practically no clothing on her body, and she noticed somewhat sadly that Oliver had been gone for so long. Blushing even more, the guy stepped back and, screaming a little, asked the girl what she was doing in his bed. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, the girl simply replied that she had waited for him for so long that she had fallen asleep, and then she asked him how his mission had gone. Frowning, Oliver told Beatrice to get up and leave his room. Otherwise, people would think up all sorts of things, and he thought that this Alexander was too persistent. He had already used this trick on him so many times and still did not give in. Was it really necessary to irritate him so much? The girl called the guy affectionately and extended her thin hand towards him. And then she pressed herself against his chest and asked him why he was so rude to her, whether she had done something wrong. Her soft breasts pressed tightly against the guy's chest, and she asked the guy if there was anything she could do to fix it. However, Oliver only waved his hand, causing the girl to fly behind him and hit the floor. Lying on the floor, Beatrice called out to the boy. Frowning, Oliver told the girl that he didn't want to waste his time on her, and then he said that he would be honest, and therefore he would say that he knew what she wanted to do. Beatrice became flustered and asked again, and she herself wondered how he knew this. Smiling, the guy scratched the back of his head and told the girl not to worry so much because he knows that she likes him, but it's not time yet. His hand, a clenched fist, shook as he wondered if the girl really thought he would tell about her affair with Alexander, or that he was dealing with demons. He just wanted to scare her. Turning away, Beatrice quietly said how stupid the guy was, and she herself thought that she was so scared because she really thought that he knew everything. The guy said that he was very tired, and it was time to sleep, and therefore she would talk next time, to which the girl objected that she was not dressed yet. But then she flew head over heels out of the guy's room. She frowned and glared at the closed doors of the guy's room as all the passers-by were staring at her. With his back to the closed doors, Oliver thought that he had already refused the girl several times, but she kept giving in. Apparently, they were not going to stop until they had his blood. Putting his finger to his chin, he frowned and said that since Alexander had gone against him, he shouldn't regret it later when he ruined everything for him. After some time, night fell on Jushi Peak. Sitting on a tree branch, Oliver said that he doesn't remember exactly where the cave in the game is, but it was there that Alexander made a deal with the demons. And clearly people don't come here often. Alexander hides well, and therefore those around him consider him an honest and righteous man. But in reality, he cooperates with the dark forces, using their gifts. Otherwise, he would never have become the main disciple of Lu Shui Peak. And then he got indignant, saying that now he realized that the legend of the immortal swordsman is just a piece of shit full of bugs, and the developers didn't try at all, and that's why his character dies so early. And it doesn't matter that all his powers were sucked out. His route still ends at the very beginning. Suddenly, Dina appeared in front of him, illuminated by a pink flame. She said she felt a faint demonic energy. The guy asked her if she could identify its source. The girl replied that they, demonic foxes, sense energy much better than other demons, and therefore she can handle it. Then the guy told her to get to work, and the demon's body dissolved into pink smoke. Having gone around the guy, this pink smoke quickly flew forward. The smoke was in the shape of a fox, and it flew forward quickly, cutting through the air. As Oliver followed him, he reflected that Adelaide had taught him how to move quickly both through trees and on water. And if he fully masters this technique, then he will not need support at all. Looking back, Dina told the guy that the energy was coming from behind the waterfall, and then she stopped in front of a waterfall, and the guy landed on a rock, noting that the cave was a good place to hide. Turning back into a human, she said that it could be dangerous, and therefore she should go first, because no one would be able to detect her, even if someone was there. Oliver told her to be careful, and the girl said that she was ready to sacrifice her life for him. And then she, turning into smoke again, flew behind the waterfall. Flying over the water, she told the guy that there really is a cave behind the waterfall, but the demonic energy that comes from there is quite weak. She turned back into a human and said that it seemed like there were only echoes of energy here. Oliver told her to check everything out, in case there was anything unusual there. Looking around, Dina noted that this must be the very place where Alexander traded with demons, but there was no one here. Suddenly, she looked down and noticed something. The girl lowered herself closer to the ground and told the guy that she had found something. She began to take out this something and noted that it was definitely left by demons. And then she turned into a pink house again and flew back, but this time with something in her paws. Dinah and Oliver made it to his room, and the guy sat down at the table to examine their find. As it turned out, it was some kind of small box with golden malachite fragments. The guy scratched his chin and wondered how he could give this box to him. And then he pressed the button that was on the lid. The lid suddenly swung back and a bright pink light burst out of the box, causing the guy to fall from his chair onto the floor. Dina was also surprised but seemed to understand what it was. Hugging the guy, who had already gotten to his feet, she happily announced that this was a demonic artifact. Hugging him from behind and pressing closer, she said that it was an immortal glow. Oliver, hearing this, asked again and said that it sounded familiar. The girl said that she would not confuse this energy with anything. And then she said that when she was a child, the Demon King and the Dragon King had fought, and it was the former who used the power of the immortal radiance, which almost completely protected him from the Dragon King's attack. And she said that she never thought that she would find such a treasure in a small cave in the Heavenly Kingdom. Breaking away from the guy, she exclaimed, saying that it seemed like heaven had blessed the guy because his luck was amazing. Oliver said that this artifact has almost absolute protection, but there are conditions for its use. He began to vigorously close and open the lid of the box, and then, with an awkward smile, he asked Dina what these conditions were. After apologizing, the girl said that she only knew what this artifact was. The guy asked her how she knew so much, to which she happily hurried to remind him that she had her own small shop in the demon market, and therefore she had seen countless weapons and medicines. And then she said that the demonic foxes, when they were considered one of the main forces in the clan of demons, and therefore they had seen a lot. To which Oliver said with a smile that he believed her, and then he said that they needed to figure out how to use this artifact. And then he asked why the Demon King left such an important thing in the cave. Dina replied that she didn't know, and that she only found this box there. And then she remembered that there was some ash there too. The boy sweated his chin thoughtfully, and the girl said that she heard that the Demon King was attacked by immortals and seriously injured. So, is it possible that he died, and these ashes are all that is left of him? Continuing to look at the box, Oliver said that at the moment the Demon King is not dead yet, because there will be many events related to him in the game. Leaning closer to the guy, Dina asked him what he was talking about, to which he only smiled and said that it was all nonsense. Frowning, he thought about keeping a closer eye on Alexander and finding out what he was up to and what kind of deal he had made with the Demon King. Suddenly, someone knocked on the window. The girl hurried to turn into a flash of light and hide in the bracelet. Opening the window, Oliver discovered that there was a small blue bird sitting on it. This bird had a piece of paper in its beak. Having unfolded this piece of paper, the guy replied that it was an invitation from Adelaide. After reading this, the guy threw the paper into the air and it immediately caught fire. And then Oliver hurried out of the room. The Misty Forest is located on Lushui Peak and is quite difficult to reach because there are almost no people there. Oliver quickly ran through the water to Adelaide, who was standing on a rock. She tucked her hair behind her ear and told the boy with a smile that today she would teach him to soar in the clouds. The guy asked her if she had really decided to teach him the next step so quickly. In response to this, the girl said that tomorrow she was leaving on a mission, and she would be gone for at least half a month, and maybe longer. Somewhat surprised by such a time frame, the guy asked if this mission was really connected with demons. In response, Adelaide asked him if he was interested in her mission in particular. The guy then said that at his current level, he could only take one entry-level mission, and so when he could take more difficult missions, it would already be in the immortal realm. Hearing this, the girl only snorted irritably and looked away, but the guy did not understand what this meant. He thought in confusion about why he felt so awkward. Did she want him to go with her? Holding up 2 fingers in front of her, Adelaide said seriously that she would do the same as before, but with some minor changes. And therefore he must watch carefully, and she must still go to the master to say goodbye, and therefore she would not be able to control his success. Luminous blue lines began to shine around the girl, and she said that the cloud steps were not just about physical strength, but about the flow of air between heaven and earth, and one had to feel it, realize the slightest breath of power, like playing a zither, and use it to become one with heaven and earth. We must not forget that the body is not meant to break through into the air, but to merge with it, to become part of the flow. As she climbed higher and higher along these luminous lines, she said that one must become like a cloud, just as free and unlimited. Standing in the air in front of the guy, she said that when the body and mind unite, forgetting about everything in this world, then you realize that the air under your feet is solid, and your body is light as a cloud. Then she stepped back onto the ground and concluded that this was all cloud steps. Approaching the guy so that they were face to face, she asked him if he understood everything, to which he answered in the affirmative. Dina, who was still wearing the bracelet, exclaimed that she understood everything too, and then she mentally asked him whether Adelaide was obliged to teach him such things. And then she said that Oliver was interesting to her, but she could not see anything like love in her eyes. Was it really just the sympathy of a genius for a genius? Turning around, Adelaide said that her mission would take place in Kunming, and then her body was enveloped in blue light, and without saying goodbye, she rose into the air and flew away. A pink light burst out from the boy's bracelet, and Dina appeared right in front of the guy and called him. Coming face to face with him, she said that Adelaide had told him the location of her mission, and then she asked him if it wasn't too obvious that she wanted him to follow her, to which he replied that it was even good, since he needed to take the second task as soon as possible. The girl blushed a little, became indignant, and exclaimed that she was talking about the wrong thing. Smiling cheerfully, Oliver said that he understood what she was talking about, but he simply admired Adelaide, and he himself thought that it was she who would kill him in the game. And then he said that tomorrow they should go to the Palm Court and see if there were any suitable quests there, because Adelaide was a great teacher, and he wanted to learn her fencing techniques. Dina said that she would also like to adopt her skills, but first the guy needs to master this technique, and there is no need to be greedy. Exclaiming that he had already learned this technique, Oliver placed his palm on the girl's waist, and then he lifted her into the air, holding her close to him, and red lights sparkled around them, and the guy asked her how she felt about it. The girl was surprised in response to this and asked him how he had mastered this technique so quickly, to which the guy grinned and said that he was a genius. The girl asked him how he wasn't ashamed to say that, and Oliver told her to get used to it. They would be together forever. And then the guy lowered himself and Dina to the ground and asked her about the grade. The girl chuckled and said that she rated it a 99, and it seemed that she had no choice but to acknowledge his talent. The next day, Oliver went to the Palm Court, and the old man, slamming his sign on the table, said that he had a mission there. Taking the tablet in his hands and looking at it, the guy asked if there were any lower-level tasks here, to which the old man, pushing his glasses up his nose, said that the guy had already reached the stage of forming a foundation, but still only completed tasks of the lowest level. Did he really not shave? That he would be laughed at for that? With a smile on his face, Oliver replied that the previous mission was also a low level, but it turned out to be more difficult. And in the end, he received not only 2 points, and he thought that he needed to look for an artifact that concealed the cultivation level. The old man put his finger to his lips and quietly told the boy not to scream like that. And then he approached the man and said that he would not tell anything about his mistake if he gave him 4 points. Otherwise, everyone would know that the pavilion elder was already too old and made a mistake that almost killed the student. The old man, covering the boy's mouth with his hand, exclaimed that he would give him another point. And then the old man threw his arm over the guy's shoulder and asked him about how difficult it was for him to work here. And in the meantime, everyone else began to pay attention to them, but still thought that Oliver was to blame for this commotion, for throwing down a challenge. Oliver stepped back and said that although this was not enough, he agreed, and the old man breathed a sigh of relief. And then, with a grin, the guy asked the man to help him get a worthy reward for the task. Tired of manipulation, the old man finally agreed. The guy went outside, and he saw 2 girls who were hurrying to Alexander, and one of them said that it didn't matter how quickly they got there, because the guy's heart was occupied by Adelaide. Hearing this, the boy frowned and his face darkened. And he thought that this was very timely, because he had long wanted to see the main character of this game. But suddenly, he thought about the fact that Alexander knew that his blood was good for cultivation. Did the Demon King really tell him about it? However, it seems that the Demon King does not know about his true identity. Otherwise, he would have been exposed as a demon spy long ago. This means that they have no useful information, and the Demon King has just started to carry out his plan. And it turns out that he was simply late to the cave and could not find out where he was hiding. After a while, the guy reached a crowd of Alexander's fans. The guy thought that he had many fans, but in his heart there was only Adelaide, and this flower has a heart, but it does not need water for love. Suddenly, he noticed that Adelaide was there too. However, he noticed how cold she was, and therefore admired the fact that Alexander could still smile at her. And Dina asked him if he wanted her to eavesdrop. The guy asked her if she was afraid of being noticed, to which she replied that he was wearing a suppressor bracelet, which perfectly hid her energy as well. And besides, she is his pet, and therefore, unless she decides to show herself, few people will be able to notice her. Only the elders and heads of the sect can notice her. Then he approved of this and told her to come back immediately if anything happened. Dina flew up to Alexander as a disembodied spirit, who, with a smile on his face, told Adelaide that he hoped they would quickly complete the task. Adelaide said that he was so hardworking that he immediately took on a new mission after finishing the previous one, and then she asked if he was sure that he needed her help. Alexander said that he wanted to break through as quickly as possible, and that was why he took on a new task so quickly, and Dina wondered if he really couldn't see that the girl didn't want to talk to him. Adelaide said she hoped he would return safe and sound. The guy thanked her for her care, and he himself thought that he never dared to think that someone like Adelaide would take care of him. And if he wins the competition in 6 months, they will become even closer. Dina said that the guy didn't have a single chance, and then decided to return to the owner. Returning to him, she told him that Adelaide and Alexander were exchanging pleasantries. But the girl was not particularly happy with this. And besides, the guy lacked both eloquence and intelligence. Then Oliver thought about what the NPC had done to Adelaide to make her side with Alexander. Dina asked the guy if it was time for them to leave. Turning around, Oliver said that this time they had teammates and they would meet them at the foot of the mountain. But now he needed to buy some things. The small shopping street was in full swing, and, as it turned out, Oliver was heading exactly there. And then, he walked around several stalls and bought something in each of them. He already had a whole bag of discounted and expired goods that he bought for next to nothing. He said with a smile that he was curious to see how much he could exchange at the demon market. After some time, a girl with short hair stood at the foot of the mountain, and on her back was a huge sword. Someone called her and she turned around to see who it was. Oliver ran out from behind the bushes, dragging a huge bag behind him, which surprised the girl. And then he folded his hands, made a fist in his palm, and introduced himself. In response to this, the girl spat out the stem that she had been holding in her mouth all this time. And then she also introduced herself, saying that her name was Kimberly and that she had heard a lot about him. She took out a book and said that she had read several stories about him and Adelaide, and she even collected them. And the guy, frowning, thought that he even knew who wrote them. With a cheerful smile, Kimberly showed the guy the book and asked him if he liked it, and Oliver suddenly blushed deeply. As it turned out, these were books with intimate content. Continuing to look at the pictures, the guy said that he and Adelaide were just studying together. Kimberly laughed loudly and said that she thought highly of the guy and was looking forward to seeing the top disciple of the Heavenly Kingdom defeated. Oliver sighed heavily and thought that he had met another madman. And then he said that it was time for them to move out. And Kimberly happily agreed with him. 2 days later, they arrived at the gate, and some white pieces of paper were falling from the sky, from which something had been cut out. These pieces of paper thickly covered the ground, and a white cloth hung on the gate. Kimberly said that out of the 35 members of the Wang family, about 20 had already died, which was a real tragedy. But Long Xiangxi was too busy to deal with such matters, and so this matter was handed over to the students. Oliver, hearing this, said that the last time he was on a mission, it was simply written down. The girl said that she heard that the Demon King died, causing the rest of the demons to go out of control and become even more dangerous. The guy shuddered and asked where she got such information. The girl replied that from many people, but these are just rumors, and this time Adelaide and Alexander's mission is to hunt demons. She said that it was too early for them to do such a thing, given their strength, and then she knocked on the gate. Oliver wondered if those ashes were all that was left of him. Then who did Alexander make a deal with? And how did he manage to do it at all? Opening the door, the girl asked him why he was hanging around there. And then she opened the doors wide, from which a white fog immediately burst out. Kimberly covered her face with her hand and replied that it was very cold here. A poor old man came out to meet them, and he asked them if they were looking for someone here. Folding his hands in a welcoming gesture, Oliver said that they were disciples of the Heavenly Kingdom and had come to sort out their problem. Then the man waved his hand and invited them to come in. Kimberly asked the guy what he had in the bag. Walking through the estate, Oliver replied that he could get weapons from the market there cheaper, to which the girl remarked that he was very prudent. They passed the maid girls, and the boy exclaimed that he was just trying to be prepared for anything. Meanwhile, one of the girls was very pale. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her eyes were looking down anxiously. Having escorted them to the door of the room, the man said that for now they could rest here, and he would go for the master. Oliver looked after the man silently. Sitting down on a chair, Kimberly noticed that all the maids they met along the way had black marks, and if they do nothing, many will die. Oliver said that on the way here he read the information that the Palm Pavilion provided them, and it said that the owner and his wife lived here, as well as their children. But the wife had been bedridden for 6 months. The daughter had rarely appeared in the last month, and the youngest son had recently died. He asked what kind of ghosts this family could have angered. Taking out some kind of compass, the girl said that first they must determine where the negative energy was coming from. The compass needle began to spin quickly, and then she suddenly stopped in a certain direction. And as it turned out, the arrow pointed at Oliver, causing his face to twist. The girl asked in surprise why the compass pointed at him. Oliver began to break out in a cold sweat and thought about the bracelet he was wearing. Oliver and Kimberly stared at each other. No one said anything. Pretending to be calm, the guy asked if her compass was broken, and he himself mentally threw himself into Dina's arms, saying that everything was lost, and she said that she, as his faithful pet, would die with him. Kimberly smiled and punched the compass and said that cheap is cheap. The arrow was still pointing at the guy, and the girl said that it was what it was since she had bought him for pennies anyway. And at that very moment, someone entered the room and the compass needle changed its direction. A man who entered the room, who was apparently the gentleman, apologized and said that he had to give his wife some medicine before she fell asleep. Kimberly and Oliver exchanged silent glances. Frowning, the girl noted that the compass was now pointing towards the master. Oliver thought with disappointment that this man not only didn't emit a demonic aura, he could barely even keep his spirit in his body, so this was a complete fake. Putting the compass back into her bosom, Kimberly told the man that everything was fine. And then he sat down on another chair and said that he was sure that the masters were already aware of the situation. He said that his family had always been merciful, and therefore he did not know who they could have offended so much that they would take revenge on them like that. Oliver asked if he would like to show them to the young lady since his wife was asleep. Mr. Wang, hearing this, only frowned and remained silent in response. The guy asked him if there were any problems with that, to which the man replied that there really were problems and they were related to his daughter's condition. Kimberly said that they should look at her anyway, because they were here to help. And if it was a curse or demons, she should know what they were dealing with. And then the man decided to take her to his daughter. Walking ahead, Mr. Wang said that his daughter had been living in this courtyard since she fell ill. Oliver quietly remarked that at this time of year the peaches were not in bloom, and therefore it was strange, and the girl agreed with him. In the courtyard, the quiet steps of a man and two Taoists were heard, and someone's gentle voice was singing a song. The Taoists and the man stopped in the courtyard and someone's figure was visible in the doorway. The girl's body was hidden by a dark crown that hung in the passageway as she continued to sing the song. She opened her eyes and peered out from behind the curtains. Lightly touching her face with her hands, Mr. Wang turned to the maids and asked them if she was sick again, to which they replied that she had been singing all day. The maid burst into tears and said that they were very scared. The man responded by sending them to help in the yard. And then he turned to the masters and said that his daughter had long since gone mad and he could not watch this. Then Kimberly said that since she was also a woman, she could go alone and check on the young lady. And she went to the girl's room. Oliver told her to be careful, to which she told him to check everything here. Maybe he'll find something. Then the door closed with a quiet bang. Kimberly asked the lady how she was feeling and said that she was there to help her. But the girl didn't answer her, but only gracefully waved her hand to the side. As it turned out, the girl was too carried away by the dance, which is why her almost naked body was gracefully writhing. Kimberly called her again and thought about how she couldn't tell if she was possessed or not. She touched her shoulder and asked her if she wanted to drink some water since she had been singing for so long. And then the young lady slowly turned her head to look at the girl, her eyes sparkling with a pink light. Suddenly, Kimberly felt a strange sensation in her legs. This made her frown and wonder what was going on. And then she fell to the floor because her legs suddenly became weak. The young lady came closer to the girl and she, blushing, cried out for her to stop. The lady's eyes were glowing red and Kimberly kept trying to shout to her. Madame Wang raised her hand, taking her hair in it, and the Taoist thought about how she couldn't move and wondered what they were going to do to her. The young lady's hand reached out to the girl and she told her that someone was controlling her and therefore she must resist. She slowly touched the girl's collar. Kimberly's body shook and she thought that she couldn't say a word. She could barely squeeze out a call for help, and she thought to herself whether she would really have to give up her innocence to a woman. Meanwhile, Oliver stood under the peach tree. He asked whether the flowers of this tree had always been so red. He thought about how he used to fly past these houses when he was still playing, because he felt something familiar. Suddenly, he heard Kimberly's call for help and turned around. And then he immediately jumped up and ran. With a sharp kick, he broke down the door of the room and burst into it. He was about to call Kimberly, but then a strange grimace crossed his face. A strange picture appeared before his eyes. A young lady was sitting on his partner. He waved his hand and told Dina that this was her turn, and Dina immediately appeared before him, engulfed in pink flames, and her outstretched finger burned even brighter. A pink arrow suddenly shot out of her finger, and this arrow hit the young lady right in the forehead, causing her eyes to roll back. The demoness immediately caught the girl falling to the floor, and the guy ran to his partner. Running up to her, he immediately asked what happened, and Kimberly just thought about how shameful it was. Dina waved her hand towards them, causing a red cloth to fly towards them. The fabric immediately wrapped around the girl's body, hiding everything that was supposed to be hidden. And then the demoness said that the girl's body seemed to have become numb, and therefore the guy should help her. And she exclaimed with a smile that the guy was so stupid that he didn't understand right away. Kimberly noted that Oliver's spirit pet's aura was much stronger than his own, so why was it serving him? Oliver, not understanding anything, scratched his head. Dina whispered in his ear that the girl in front of him was almost naked, and he was looking at her crystal clear, to which he blushed and objected, saying that he just wanted to help. Kimberly said that she had been under an illusion for a long time and therefore could not move, and then she thanked the guy for saving her. Oliver replied that it was not difficult for him, and then he began to wrap her in cloth. He lifted the girl onto his shoulder and said that he would carry her to the sofa and ask Dina to help her change. After some time, everything in this yard became quiet. Young Mrs. Wang was already lying peacefully in her bed, covered with a blanket. Mr. Wang, leaving his daughter's chambers, asked Oliver if she was badly hurt, to which the guy replied that she was fine. And then the man said that he hoped that he would put in a good word for his daughter with her. The guy told the man not to worry and said that it was their work, and they needed to figure out what was going on so they could help them. And then he said that it seemed that an evil spirit had entered the girl and that the power was based on lust. Mr. Wang exclaimed that their family had been pure all these years. So why were they being punished like this? Dina, who returned as a barely noticeable smoke, said that she checked the house and there was an evil aura in it. Turning into a human, she said that, however, she could not find the source of the aura. Oliver touched his chin and thought, and then it dawned on him, and he said that there were too many mirrors in this house. He thought about how there was a quest in the game before, and it was on the border of Kunming, and that's why this place was so familiar to him. The plot was that there was a mirror demon who was killing people everywhere. He loves peach blossoms and fine things, and women, and the first step in the solution is to break all the mirrors except one, so that the spirit will come there. Oliver thought it was a coincidence, since Adelaide was the one who completed this quest in the game. However, this time she is on a mission with Alexander, so he must deal with everything himself, and at the same time see how strong these demons are. And then he asked Dina if she had found many mirrors in the house, to which she answered in the affirmative. Mr. Wang asked if it was all because of the mirrors that his wife was constantly buying. Oliver and Dinah looked at each other, thinking that this was a hint. And then the guy asked the man about when his wife started buying mirrors. Meanwhile, someone lowered his bloody blade. As it turned out, it was Adelaide who was cutting down the demons with sharp attacks. She finished, and then told Alexander that their mission was over. Alexander said that, as expected from her, everything ended even without his participation. And then he winked at her and said with a smile that then they could proceed to the next mission. Turning away, Adelaide said that she would first look into a nearby town, where there was also another task, and see if help was needed there. Folding his fan, the boy said that he would go with her then, but the girl didn't care. Meanwhile, the rays of the setting sun illuminated the gates of the Van estate. Oliver said that the mirror demon knows that they have come for him, but he still targeted Kimberly, and it seems like he's gotten even stronger after absorbing so many people. Dina asked if the demon wasn't afraid that they would break all the mirrors and he couldn't hide. The guy replied with a smile that not everyone is as smart as they are, and the girl exclaimed that she was going to get angry. And Oliver thought that, in fact, he should care too much about this task, because it does not require any special efforts. There are only 2 stages in the mission, and breaking the mirrors is the first step, and the second stage is somehow related to the demon's peculiarity, and that is lust. But even Adelaide couldn't kill him. But what was Mrs. Wang's role in this, and why did she buy so many mirrors? Suddenly, Kimberly came up to him and said that she was already feeling better, and the illusion dissipated after the young lady fell asleep. Blushing a little, she thanked him again for his help. The guy said that there was no need to thank him because they were comrades, and then she said that she noticed that he was using a normal sword, which was not suitable for fighting demons. Oliver, smiling awkwardly, said that she was right, and that he couldn't afford to buy a good sword, so he walked around with this one. The girl said that she came from a family of blacksmiths, and therefore he could give her his sword so that she could make it better. Oliver was a little surprised that she came from a family of blacksmiths. Looking away, the girl said that she would understand if he did not want to give her his sword. But then Oliver, with a joyful smile, handed her the sword and thanked her from the bottom of his heart. And Dina noticed that her master was very lucky. Kimberly took his sword and then she left. Suddenly, Dina appeared next to the guy and said that she knew the girl's last name, to which the guy asked if she knew it too. Placing her hands on the boy's shoulders, the girl said that this family was famous for its members being able to create a divine weapon, even with a beginner-level cultivation level. The girl's tail wrapped around the guy's body, and then he noticed that she was overdoing it. Dina pressed her cheek against her master's cheek and exclaimed that she could not help herself and could not even imagine why his body attracted her so much. Besides, she is his spiritual pet and is always there, and if he finds himself a wife, she will still not leave him. She has nothing to be ashamed of. The guy yawned and said that he probably needed to get used to it. And then he said that they should agree that she was forbidden to take human form when he was in the shower, because it would only interfere. The girl laughed quietly and said that there was nothing she could do about it. And then she said that he could either terminate the contract so that she could go kill Adelaide, or he could get used to the company of his pet. And then she whispered to him as he was leaving that, in fact, sea monks live with their pets. Oliver teased her with a smile, saying that it seemed like his pet had been craving his body for a long time, which made the girl blush. And then she told him not to make fun of her because it was unfair. And then she, saying that she was going to bed, returned to his bracelet. Night had already fallen, and Adelaide and Alexander reached the gates of the Wang family estate. The guy said that the demon's aura wasn't too strong, and they seemed to be able to handle him themselves. Suddenly, someone approached them from the left, and the two noticed that Adelaide and Alexander were in front of them. The girl with pink hair asked Adelaide if she could take them with her, since she wanted to learn from her so much. As it turned out, this girl's name was Nancy, and she was the granddaughter of the master of Juyang Peak. She thought about how she immediately decided to follow Adelaide when she learned that she came to this city on a mission, and she was also glad that Alexander was here. Adelaide said she didn't mind. The guy who was with Nancy turned to her happily, and they thought that this task was worth it. Alexander said that the girl has many admirers, and he himself admires her, and he would like to spar with her when they return. Approaching the door, the girl said that there were still 5 months until the competition, and therefore she would prefer to wait. And then she knocked on the door. And then the door slowly swung open, and the same old man who had met Oliver and Kimberly appeared from the door, and he asked who they were looking for. With her hands folded in a polite greeting, Adelaide said that she was a disciple from the heavenly kingdom.